Is our, are we completed the turn up for the AV, or are we still waiting for the stream to start? We're good to go? Okay, great, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It's going to call to order our regularly scheduled council meeting for May the 11th, 2026. We have Councillor Braithwaite joining us online. Everyone else is joining us here in the hall. As we call the meeting to order, we always like to just take a moment and acknowledge that we gather and do our work on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt Nation, and that their historic connections to these lands and adjoining waters continue to this day. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We have two sets of minutes. We have from April 27th, both 6 and 7 p.m. Can I move adoption? Thank you. Seconded. Any changes, corrections, or amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. My mayor's remarks are fairly brief today. I just want to acknowledge the incredible work done by volunteers and with the support of staff, the Parks and Rec staff, for the Camas Day celebration that happened. It was the 80th anniversary of Uplands Park, and there was a great turnout. The Bald Eagles band played. There was lots of booths from various people interested in the preservation and restoration of natural systems in our region. Lots of education, lots of good tours, and really well attended and well appreciated on an absolutely beautiful day. So I just want to express appreciation. I think almost all of council were able to make it out on that day, and so just really appreciate the support of everyone involved. I also just want to say I was able to attend in my official capacity the opening of the new Crest building, and which is a great regional service on behalf of all of our emergency responders for the region. I do just want to take a moment and acknowledge Councillor Patterson, who is our appointee there, but quite meaningfully was involved in the steering committee that both the finance committee and the steering committee that oversaw the finding of the land, the building of the building, and seeing it all to completion. So, that was a very successful, both from a financial and I think an operational perspective. So I just want to express, since you're a representative there on behalf of our council, thank you for all the work. I know it's many hours, and you were very directly involved in that process. So, and a very interesting building. If you ever have a chance to go see it, it really is quite impressive in terms of what they built there. I did just want to acknowledge that the unfortunate requirement that the Oakbay Tea Party Society had to call off the parade this year, I know has had a big sort of ripples through the community as people are sort of feeling that loss before that day happens. I do appreciate that they have every intention of finding a path forward for years to come, and I do know that there are certainly many hurdles under some of the new guidelines to seeing some of these community events happen. I apologize for my voice, but I do just want to acknowledge, of course, that it's a big loss felt by the community that brings a lot of joy to people. So I'm certainly hopeful that the challenges can be overcome next year as we get to a substantive year milestone for that party. And last, but certainly not least, I just want to acknowledge the region lost one of the CRD director and a councillor in Langford. I think she was a councillor in Langford for 20-odd years, 24, 26 years, was Lillian Spock. And I certainly had a chance to work with Lillian in many places, primarily around the CRD and the hospital district and the housing corporation boards, but also on subcommittees over the years. Really appreciated her approach to the region, the work that had to be done, her contributions to the debate, her thoughtfulness, her passion for her own community, but also the region. And it's a bit of a shock when you're working beside someone and they just disappear. And I know that she touched many lives in her public and private life in her time in public office. And I just wanted to just acknowledge that work tonight. And so I appreciate we were able to lower our masks in recognition, as was, I think, it's symbolic of how she was seen. It was done across the region for her work. That concludes my remarks. We do next go to public comment and question period. So this is an opportunity if you're online and wish to speak to council, you can raise your hand in the Zoom app at this time. And if you're in the hall, we'll just ask you to put up your hand and invite you forward. This is just an opportunity to speak to council on items not on the agenda tonight and not related to a specific land use application, but are related to work of council. They can be suggestions, they can be questions, they can be any item that are of interest to the community. And so if anybody wishes to speak to council, sometimes we have lots of speakers and sometimes we have probably just as frequently we have none, but it is an opportunity. So if anybody wishes to address council at this time, again, this is not on items on the agenda, but on other items, please come forward. Someone has to be first, so you can come forward. And I'll just walk you through this process. It's pretty straightforward. Yep, come to the main desk here, just have a seat. You can turn on the microphone in front of you. You can just, if you state your name and just your municipality for residents, you don't have to give your address. And then you have up to 3 minutes to talk to council.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Judy Jones. I live in Oak Bay. We live in a duplex that we purchased last year with our adult child and their spouse and 2 grandchildren. I'm thrilled to be able to be a close participant in the lives of my grandchildren and that their parents are able to live in this community. I should note, however, that Oak Bay was not top of the list for my kids as a future home. They were concerned that it is an older community and doesn't support a lot of supports for young families and tends not to support the types of things that they're passionate about. Space for young families, childcare, cycling and walking infrastructure to schools, and affordable housing for everyone who lives and works in this community. We were lucky enough to find a home close enough to the border of Victoria to reassure them. And I think that's a very sad reflection on this community. We were extremely disheartened to hear that the planned daycare space at Carnarvon Park is at risk. Daycare options are extremely limited in Oak Bay. There are only 7 spots for infants and toddlers in Oak Bay. You heard that correctly, not 7 open spots, 7 spots for infants and toddlers. My granddaughter's 11 months old and her brother is 2.5. They do not receive daycare in Oak Bay. Their parents are faced with 2 drop-offs and 2 pickups every working day in Saanich. The justification for the proposal to not build the planned daycare spaces at Carnarvon is vague in its reassurance that the spots will be available in School District 61. The notes do not specify exactly the age groups targeted for these spots, but it is my word-of-mouth understanding that the school district may use school space for before and after school care and may hire educational assistants in this role, which will provide those employees with full-time work instead of just school hour work. The information provided for infant and toddler spaces was even more vague. I'm also a family physician. I've listened with horror in recent years as my younger colleagues who live in Oak Bay discuss shortening their working days because of lack of childcare. Last I heard, we do not need fewer working family physicians in this community. I also work in the operating room at the hospital. A large number of the staff struggle with daycare options that allow them to get to work when the OR day starts, 7:30 in the morning. One of our major hospitals in this region is steps from Oak Bay. Oak Bay does not appear to be doing anything to help our healthcare workers provide much needed care for this community and still care for their own young families. My friends who live in this community frequently lament the fact that their children will not be able to live near to them because of lack of affordable housing and lack of affordable childcare. We have an opportunity to build a quality, affordable childcare space at Carnarvon Park. Please do not squander this opportunity for Oak Bay to support young families. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. That is technically on the agenda tonight, but we've had a lot of correspondence, so I think allowing a person to speak to it is fine as well. So thank you for speaking. Anybody else wish to address council tonight on items not on the agenda? Please go ahead, come forward.
Thanks, Council. My name is Evan Brown, resident of Oak Bay. Good to see everyone again. I had a couple of thoughts and suggestions that I thought I'd just come to the meeting. And it's mainly around the official community plan and how it relates to what can and can't be done in the Uplands neighborhood. And recently I've been, and you've seen me here before, sort of in this same type of, it's the same type of theme for what I'm saying, but I reflected a lot on how maybe we could adjust the OCP to better help developers and residents of the Uplands deal with what is becoming a bit of a problem, I think, in how they're going to start developing it. And my thought was it might be a good idea to think about narrowing what can be built in the neighborhood. And this is in an effort to protect it. And my worry is the protectionism that we have now is not there for what is, I believe, only one of 2 national historic sites of a residential area in Victoria. I think the other one's Chinatown, where you've got a national historic site. So it begs that it's a bit different than the rest of Oak Bay. Yet it's afforded the same luxuries of having up to 4 units on a single lot, duplexes, multiplexes, as everywhere else in Oak Bay. So my suggestion would be, my thought was, going back to a framework of what we could put in the Uplands would be one main residence, allow them to have a suite to afford younger people to rent there as a helper for that type of demographic, but also allow up to 1 accessory dwelling unit on each property. So you effectively could have up to 3 dwelling units on a property, but all under common ownership. So instead of allowing stratification of lots where you're putting up multiple units with different owners effectively, putting up almost the same number of units, but all under common control, I think that would be potentially a better way to densify the Uplands without destroying potentially the tree canopy and what it is right now, which is, I think, a National Historic Site that needs to be saved. And so all of that that was my thoughts. So I started to poll the neighbors and people that I've talked to. And I've got some great comments. I've got this in for the record, but I've got about 200 people who agree that this would be a good change to the OCP, and with some good comments in there on why. So I thought I'd just bring that forward and hope you can look at some changes in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. It may well be zoning more than the OCP, but I appreciate the comments made. I will share if you're communicating back to people, there was a very clear piece of Bill 44 that we could not limit anything to less than 4 units, even it had to, even heritage buildings, unless they had been designated 2 years before the bill was brought in, was the only exception to that. And so there are some limits under the provincial laws to what we can do. It does not specifically address things like stratification, to the best of my knowledge. So thank you for doing that and bringing forward the information. Thank you. Anybody else wish to talk to council? I don't see hands online. Anybody else in the room? Okay, I will bring it back to this table then. Thank you, everybody who spoke tonight. I appreciate your comments. We move to items, or section 6 of our agenda this evening. These are recommendations that came from the Committee of the Whole. This is back on April 20th. So we have, it was a very robust discussion that went a good hour past our usual finish time, ending up with a few modifications of the original recommendations. And so what I thought I would do is that since it had public input at that meeting, I would just seek any additional public input on any of the items 6.1.1 to 6.1.4. So these are all the recommendations that came from the Committee of the Whole. So just open it up for any public comment at this time, and then we'll go through procedurally to consider adopting the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole. So this is streets, parks, and facilities naming, council priority projects, optimized development processes, the 4 council priority projects, updating the OCP, project sign-off for infrastructure servicing study, new subdivision works and services bylaw and the update for the home-based business regulations, in case people are, and engagement for updates to the home-based business regulations, in case people are curious about what these items are. In fact, it took me that long to read it aloud. It explains why it was a long meeting, the last one. So we went through all of that. I don't see hands up online. And I will just remind people, if they're perhaps watching this on YouTube, I would encourage you to go to the Zoom app link on the agenda. But if you don't want to do that, you can always call into the 1855 number that's in the agenda and go through that process of hitting *9 to raise your hand. Okay, seeing nobody from the public, I'm going to start with the initial piece here, 611. This is the draft streets, parks, and facilities naming and renaming policy. So the recommendations here that the report would be received for information and the staff be directed to engage with the residents of Prince Andrew Crescent regarding potential renaming of the street. I do have one other suggested minor change to that recommendation, but I'm going to ask if someone can make the recommendation from the committee of the whole. Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved. Okay. So the thing I just wanted to raise was just we had some feedback from members of the proposed renumbering of that cul-de-sac off of King George, and they wanted to reopen the discussion around perhaps renaming or looking at a different way of renumbering. And so I think because this directs a very specific course of action to the specific renumbering, that we should, I think, give that opportunity to amend the motion to also include initiation of, or to include consultation with the affected neighbors of the cul-de-sac off King George before moving that forward. That'd be my suggestion. So if that's amenable to the council, I would just suggest somebody make the amendment motion to include that. Moved by Councillor Appleton, seconded by Councillor Smart. Thank you. So on that amendment, does anybody have any questions? Because I can certainly give that to staff. Not seeing any. Okay, so I'll call the question on the just on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So the motion as a whole, which is to direct the course of action on the naming policy. Seeing no other hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you for that. We move to 6.1. The recommendation from the committee was to approve the scope of that. I'm going to, again, ask that somebody move the motion as it stands here.
Do you want to read aloud, Your Worship?
No, you can just move the motion as recommended, that approving the scope of Part 2.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Again, I just have a slight recommendation here, is that we had an amendment made in the thing to include the inclusion of a preliminary report. Just talking with staff, it probably is better for clarity to change the inclusion of to subject to approval of a preliminary report, because I think the intention was that we understand the key KPIs and so forth prior to signing off on the final approval of these pieces. So that's going to be my suggestion, is just so it's a bit of a clarity of language. And I think, Ms. Hunt, I think that's better reflective of the conversation we had, yeah. So does that make sense to people? So just changing the inclusion of to subject to approval of a preliminary report to council. Okay, so moved by Councillor. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay. Any further discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So the motion now is as amended, just to be clear about so the preliminary report will come back to council with KPIs and so forth before the final sign off on the projects. Any other discussion before I call the question? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I think that's all of my various amendments I had. To where now on to say 6.1.3.
Sorry, I'm looking at the handout.
Oh, sorry. Yep. I'm going with the agenda items, not that, so.
Okay, so that's fine, yeah. It's not, it's 8.3.
Yeah, those are the numbers from the committee of the whole meeting. My apologies.
I'm making sure I'm not
Nope.
going with you.
Nope, no, that's fine. In fact, just for comfort of everybody, so 6.1.3 is for the 4 council priority projects, which is 8.2 in the committee of the whole report, if people are referring to that report. And so there's a recommendation here, again, so it was slightly amended, so the recommendation from the committee is here. We can just move that recommendation
Your worship, I will move the recommendation under 6.1.3 for council priority projects to implement the updated OCP.
Okay, is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this before I call the question? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, I will be voting in favor, but I just wanted to express my desire to, and I think we talked about this in the last meeting, to just have some ongoing conversations about what that complete infrastructure servicing study plan will look like when it comes back to us, to ensure that what we receive really allows us to have adequate decision-making. I do remain somewhat concerned that there's going to be a long period of time before we potentially have a touch point on that, but overall I am supportive, so I just wanted to share what I expressed in the last meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Don't see any other hands. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then we have, actually, this is also under 6.3, I guess, so that, I didn't take it as that, but there was the 3 breakout pieces, which is the sign off on the infrastructure servicing study, new subdivision works bylaw, and, yes, those 3 other pieces attached. So it's right, I should just make clarification, was the motion to include all of those pieces? But those are the 4 priority projects, so I take it, actually, that probably was the inclusion, okay.
For clarification, your worship, yeah, that would be the recommendations under 8.2 from the committee of the whole
Yeah.
in their entirety.
Yeah, thank you. So we have, so I took that as all of those pieces being included in that. That was the recommendation from the committee of the whole. If anybody wishes me to break it out, though, I'm happy to do so at this time. Okay, so consider 6.1.3 approved. And then we move to 6.1.4, and this is engagement for updates to home-based business. So there was, as you see in the recommendations here, it was the report with 3 additional amendments. So that's a recommendation. If I can have that motion put on the table.
So moved, your worship.
Seconder, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion that we omit the amendment to include stricter limits on non-resident employees from the work plan.
Sorry, the recommendation here is to include stricter limits on non-resident employees. You're asking that we strike that?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion would be to amend to strike the 3rd bullet point of the add-ons,
I think it's the second of 3.
or sorry, second of the 3 bullet points, correct. Is there a seconder for that? Moved, seconded by Councillor Smart. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I do know the agenda items and followed along. And I think that in the case of, it's a well-developing proposal to update our bylaw, but I think that this particular requirement or idea is something that is very fraught to regulate and probably unnecessary. Keeping track of, though, even if you made it a requirement, and I'm not sure why you would, compliance would be problematic. And I think that, as I know I've discussed at this table before, in terms of who comes and goes from property in Oak Bay, it's not just employees, it's all sorts of people who service people's homes. And that's going on every day, throughout the day, even into the evenings, with deliveries, gardeners, home care workers, what have you, that have nothing to do with home-based businesses. So why we would specifically make home-based businesses work to a different standard of who can come and go from the premises doesn't make sense to me at a time when we're trying to liberalize and modernize the approach to allowing this kind of activity within our community. So I think it's regulatory overreach, unnecessary, and unenforceable. So that's why I'm asking that it be struck.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I will be supporting this motion. I agree that I see a lot of the benefit of what we're doing with this work of actually allowing residents to basically continue and thrive in home-based businesses, while striking the balance of resident enjoyment. And I with regards to particularly the fact that this is under things that we're going to engage the community with, I do see this one, and this is why I also didn't support including options for hours of operation for business operations, because I saw it in a very similar vein, that it's not something that is really enforceable. And to put that out for public engagement on that topic, I just don't see that. I see that being a bit of a make-work project that, in the end of the day, is going to be very difficult to enforce, and really the concerns around hours of operation are covered by our noise bylaws. So I will be supporting the amendment on the table.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Appreciate this was a strange meeting where we didn't have as many people around the table for it, so appreciate that, these conversations. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
This might be a good topic. I won't be supporting the motion, but I think this would be a good topic for consultation, which was part of our recommendation. And the last time we discussed this, we're going out to the business community in Oak Bay to beyond the Oak Bay Village to all our village centers. And I think this would be a good topic for discussion at that consultation. So let's ask the business community, the commercial community, how they feel about it. I think it's a fair question. I understand the concerns around enforcement and regulation, but I think we owe it to our small business community here at the moment to at least discuss this possibility with them before we make a final decision. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's, in fairness, this is the recommendation is an engagement plan, but we wanted to get it as close as possible to what we thought would be the correct balance in going out for that consultation. Councillor Patterson, on the motion to amend.
Yes, speaking against the motion to amend, I understand Councillor Watson's statement that that there would be difficulty enforcing this, but I think that there are many policies we develop that can be difficult to enforce, but I see some of these restrictions as an enabler to be able to enforce should problems arise. And I think that these were areas that were of concern and will continue to be of concern to the community. And so I think it really, what this does is enable enforcement should we require it. I think the whole enforcement around home-based businesses in its entirety could be difficult to enforce, but nevertheless, we are moving towards a strategy to doing this rather than just having members of the community decide to do this on their own and without any guidance. So this sets the parameters and is more of an enabler than an enforcement in my mind. So for that reason, I won't support.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll speak very briefly. I'm not supportive of the motion. I appreciate where it's coming from, and I take it of two things. One is the discussion around the table, and I take it to be worthwhile. Was twofold. One, this is home-based businesses, so this is sort of, there could be all the people who live in the house plus 2 full-time or multiple part-time workers within that same home. These are not commercial zones, these are home. And so there's a difference between having full-time workers in your home outside of people who live there versus, people visiting and doing, say, once a month coming and doing gardening work. So that was that consideration. The second consideration was to the interest of supporting vibrant, commercial centers to make sure that where a business actually has multiple full-time employees, that they're using commercial spaces that have adequate parking and other things that relate to that. So not to eliminate the possibility of having employees, but to reduce it from 2 additional full-time on top of the resident or residents. And so that was the direction given back for consultation, and I'm supportive of that direction. I think, and I think because it is a building or a business license model, we do have a slightly more enforcement options because people essentially sign up for the type of building license required. So those things could be captured by just a sworn affidavit or a sign off from the applicant that that's the intention that they would follow. So that's where I ended up on this one, and I do appreciate you raising it, Councillor Watson, because it was a point of considerable discussion, and I think good arguments made on all sides of it. So any other discussion on the motion? So the motion to amend at this point. So if this passes, they would strike the second dot, which is to include stricter limits on non-resident employees. So a vote in favor is a vote to remove that. A vote opposed is to keep it, which is, I always like to reiterate because this is the opposite. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment and those opposed, I have Councillor Patterson, Braithwaite, Green, and myself opposed, so that does stay in. Any other amendments or changes to the recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Watson and Smart opposed. This will go for consultation, and we'll come back to council with the results of that consultation. We move now to section 7. This is reports and memorandums. These are not subject to public input. Our first one is the project update for Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan. Depending on what goes forward here, this will come back to council for final approval and have public input, additional public input at that time. We've obviously had a lot of public input through the consultation process, but this is really coming back to us to get some direction based on some of the changes that have happened with the building, grants, et cetera. So with this, I'm assuming I'm going to give this over to Mr. Souliere. Welcome. And for those who are at home, Mr. Souliere is our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture for Oak Bay. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues, including David Graham to my left, the Senior Manager of District Facilities and the Project Manager, as well as Rihanna Lachance, the Director of Financial Services, to provide us project status update on the Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan. Since our update, last update a few months ago, the team has been working on the design details and capital cost estimates, operational projections, as well as an assessment of options for funding the plan. In addition to providing a status update this evening, this is an important check-in to confirm the council direction on specific items which are critical to complete the current planning phase.
You're going to have to do the next slide.
Oh, next slide, please.
You can just say next slide.
We're just going to fix a Navy, there we go, a Navy issue in the room. Please go ahead.
And next slide, please.
You're going to have to do it manually.
As outlined in the report, the overall cost estimate of $30.3 million remains within the project budget. At roughly 60% design completion, we engaged a quantity surveyor to complete a Class B report, which included the estimated cost to deliver the amenities outlined in the schematic design previously approved by council. The final costing will be captured with a Class A report prior to tendering the project for construction. Next slide. Over the past few months, the team has continued to assess potential costs, benefits, and trade-offs for this major investment. There are two specific design components that we would like to review with council. First, the green or living roof is a sustainable design element included in the most recent schematic design that has the potential to offer benefits such as management of stormwater and building insulation. Over the past few months, we have examined further the capital cost and the requirements associated with maintaining this feature over the long term. As noted in the report, the green roof may not be an optimal choice for this project based on the high capital costs, risks, and complexity of the feature, and in considering these relative to the original proposal for an array of solar panels on the roof. Should council choose to replace the green roof with a standard roof and solar panels, it is expected that there would be a net cost savings while still achieving the net zero energy goals for the building. Next slide, please.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor, but the presentation is not showing up on Zoom.
Thank you for that clarification. Is it possible to switch it in a way that is shared on the Zoom call? And sorry, Councillor, to all of those watching online, I do have the Zoom instance open on my desktop. I was looking online for this, and I didn't look over here to see if it was being shared, so. It is not. Oh. Are you able to share the screen? I don't think it's being shared at the moment. Just give us a moment here. We will, for all of you online and watching, we will get to this. It didn't actually share. I don't think you actually completed the share on that screen. Screen 2. Yeah, click the share button at the bottom. No, there, yep. You're sharing the wrong screen, though, for some reason. It's sharing your other screen. Yep, you're sharing it. Try the share again. If you share the, yeah. There we go. Perfect, that works. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, next, we're going to have to do some catch up here. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Okay. The second design consideration staff have noted relates to the childcare space on the north side of the proposed community center. Per council direction from December 2024, the space will accommodate 24 3 to 5-year-olds. The current design is aligned with provincial licensing requirements and includes 222 square meters or 2,400 square feet of indoor space and approximately 187 square meters or 2,000 square feet of dedicated outdoor space. The rationale for bringing this consideration to council at this time relates to developments that have occurred since council approved the project scope relating to the childcare provision. One of the most significant changes occurred when the province amended legislation to allow school boards to expand childcare programs for all ages late last year. Locally, this change supported School District 61 in responding to demands from families for increased care on school properties, with funding for new and expanded programs and infrastructure. We have learned that in the past 3 years, spaces for infants to 5-year-olds on School District 61 property have increased from less than 200 spaces to nearly 700 spaces, and before and after school from 350 to 4,000 spaces. When we recently spoke with a leadership representative of the Ministry of Education and Childcare, she confirmed that based on the significant progress, every family in Greater Victoria should have access to care for 3 to 5-year-olds within the next year. She also advised that additional spaces that are in the planning phase will further support infant and toddler age group as well as school-age children. And we have now confirmed that 4 School District 61 projects in and around Oak Bay will add 164 new spaces for families within the next 2 to 3 years, and that new opportunities are still being explored in local schools. Next slide, please. With this information now available, Council has the opportunity to consider desired outcomes and whether an update to the design of the community centre is needed. To be clear, staff are not suggesting the District of Oak Bay has no role in the provision of childcare, but rather that we may focus on where we can add value. For example, there remains a strong demand for programs such as day camps that support families outside of the school term. Oak Bay, along with other municipal recreation departments across the region, have experience and expertise in the provision of such programs to meet community needs, often limited only by the availability of appropriate space. Next slide, please. Moving from capital to operating, you'll find included with this report a summary of the assessment of operating impacts for the plan, including the community center and outdoor amenities. The methodology applied by staff considered the initial 3 years of operation and the anticipated financial implications. As noted, the overall net expense is anticipated to be relatively low by year 3. Next slide, please. The final section is focused on the proposed funding strategy. Firstly, staff have assessed the potential sources of funds and propose a balanced approach that allocates reserve funds for 50% of the cost and funds from debt for the other 50%. Should the district receive any other funds, such as through a grant, the amount of debt or reserve would be reduced. Next slide, please. Shown in this slide are 3 options for council to consider when authorizing debt for this capital project. The first option does not require electoral approval when annual debt servicing is within the district's approval-free liability zone, and this is recommended for the Carnarvon Park project. The other 2 options would seek electoral approval to proceed with borrowing and would have cost and schedule impacts as noted in the table. Next slide, please. Pending further direction from council this evening, the next project update is planned for July. We are quickly approaching the end of the planning phase for this project, and so the decisions sought today are critical to mitigate impacts to the schedule. We look forward to answering any questions you may have and to receiving your direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soulier. I did note in the report there were 3 good sort of guidelines at a high level. One was sort of keeping the childcare option as is, looking at eliminating the space or reducing the size of the building, or just looking to redesign the building for multi-purpose use. And I thought that's probably a good framework for us to sort of contemplate our balance of pieces. As we tend to do in these matters, before I get to motions, I'm going to see if there are members of council who have questions of staff. And I imagine some probably do have questions for staff. So with that, I will turn. It looks like we may have lost Councillor Braithwaite. Oh, she's there on the iPhone. I see. Never mind. Yeah, questions, and I'll start a speaking list. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for the report and the presentation. Really appreciate it. Through you to Mr. Soulier. My question is about the daycare facility. It's a very difficult decision, and I'm not not very happy about the options here, but I wanted to know if you or your staff had pursued any other daycare options for the space. I know the province has stopped funding, and I think that should be a message very clear that this is not about the municipality, it's about the province and their lack of funding now for daycare. Although it's available in schools, as the speaker pointed out, it's limited. So I'm just wondering if we've looked at other models. There used to be something called a P3, private-public partnership, and I just wondered if that's a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, just for clarification, when you say other models, are you talking about the youth that would be served, the age group, or are you speaking about how it would be delivered?
How it would be delivered. Thank you.
Yeah, through the mayor. So staff really looked at 2 options. One is a district-operated option or a leased option. Those were the 2 options that we sort of looked at in terms of how the daycare would be delivered. What it was proposed was the leased option, where an external provider would come in and run the facility and manage really all the provision of the services in the new building, and essentially pay a lease rate to the district that would go towards the future capital costs of maintaining the building, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Watson, Swart, and Patterson.
Yeah, thank you to Mr. Soulier, please. Just following first up on that line of inquiry from Councillor Green. In a leased operation, in the proposal as it stands right now, would it be possible not to make the improvements or not incorporate the design in the kind of the skeleton of the building and leave those improvements to a lessor under an arrangement? Or do they have to be built now? I'm thinking about the opportunity to sort of hedge your bets and create more like the shell of the space and leave it unprogrammed and see if you can find a leasehold operator who would come in and make their own improvements to make it daycare ready.
Through the mayor, we have not investigated that option, and based on my experience with these types of arrangements, funding for those types of improvements is very difficult to come by. The operators are typically faced with significant overhead at the startup with hiring and finding staff, and adding to that the cost of fitting out a building and paying for the completion of the building would likely be a challenge. I've not seen it done, but it possibly could be an option. It's not one that we've investigated deeply.
Thank you. So just to follow up, so is it basically then without the province as an active funding partner, it's unlikely that we would be able to, anybody would want to do daycare in this facility? Is that what, were my understanding?
Through the mayor, when it comes to the capital costs, yes, I think the province has been a key partner for many years in this space.
Thank you. Councillor Smart and then Patterson.
Well, thank you. I'll start off with just a couple of questions about the green roof aspect. I just wondered if you could comment on the aesthetics of changing from a green roof to a solar roof. I know we had some really great response from the community on the look of this building, and I'm just wondering, I don't remember how tall the parapet is. Like, will the solar panels be visible from the street? If you could comment, thank you.
Mr. Graham.
Through your worship, yes, the building would have that sawtooth look that you often see with solar panels, unless we increase the parapet height of the roof. Being that part of the neighborhood goes up a hill that looks down on the roof, they would be losing that green roof aesthetic and instead be looking at solar panels.
Please continue.
Thank you. My second question with regards to the potential proposal to change the green roof to solar panels was just with the cost savings described. I just wondered, does that cost savings take into consideration adding the amount of insulation and potentially new membrane that would be required for the roof to make it have the same R-value rating that it did with the green roof on it? I just wondered if it said net, so I'm assuming it sort of includes everything, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Mr. Graham.
Through your worship, short answer is yes, we'd be using a high albedo roof to have the passive cooling function. The insulation value would be brought up to the level to ensure that we meet that net zero and net carbon neutral. Technically, we would lose the thermal mass of the roof, which can play a part in heating and cooling, but we would meet all the requirements of net zero energy building.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My next question is just with regards to the child care programming. Really appreciate the extra detail that was provided in the presentation. I just wanted to additionally ask, is staff aware of how many of those additional spaces, 164 spaces in Oak Bay and Saanich? Saanich is obviously a really big municipality. So do we know how many potentially are in Oak Bay?
Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, yes, I can provide that detail. So at the Uplands campus, so in Oak Bay, there will be 48 new 3 to 5-year-old spaces, and those are anticipated to come in the next year. And then the Saanich locations, we focused in on the locations that were in close proximity to the Oak Bay border. So I'll provide those to you. Mount Douglas Secondary, there'll be 36 new spaces. Campus View Elementary, 44 spaces. And Frank Hobbs Elementary, 36 spaces. And those 3 locations are expected to come online in the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. I appreciate that level of detail. My next question is just with regards to if the will at this table was to potentially direct a shift to keep the child care but design it for infant toddler care, understanding how little of that is available in our community, and that would be a redesign. Could staff sort of summarize what I imagine might be an additional cost for design at this point to proceed with infant toddler care? Thank you.
Perhaps also just some clarification whether the 22 spots, I think you indicated for 3 to 5, did that number change with the change of use?
Through the mayor. So yes, to the second part of the question, the number of clients would change. It would drop significantly. We'd be looking at a number of 12 from 24 to 12. The ratios, the design would be different, and we would have to report back on what would be required to change the design. But yeah, we have been carrying on based on the 3 to 5 year requirements and the licensing requirements for that type of operation.
Thank you. Please continue, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on that, it's great that staff has been looking at that a bit. So have staff possibly looked into having 2 infant toddler cares with some shared facilities, or is that typically not licensed and approved, and or the option of having 1 infant toddler care for 12, which would be a much smaller footprint and a smaller multi-purpose space? Has staff kind of considered those options so far?
I'm not sure to give that to Mr. Soulier or Mr. Graham. Over to you, Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, no, we have not looked at multiple infant toddler care spaces. We haven't really looked into the design of infant toddlers spaces at all. I'm aware of that there are differences, and that I have spoken with our staff about the fact that it would be require redesign, but the area that's required is, we'd be working with the same area unless we were to expand into the other multi-purpose areas, the rooms that are on the south side of the building. So yeah, that would be obviously a bigger change than just using the north side of the building.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I appreciate understanding that that work hasn't yet been done. Having worked on childcares before, I'm aware of how much smaller an infant toddler care could be, and that there might be some potential. I think that's the end of my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. I have Councillor Patterson next.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just, could staff clarify for me, at the time the public engagement was done, was there discussion at that time about potential changes that were coming to the provincial childcare program that could affect the planning?
Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, so the most recent public engagement that was completed was in January. In those sessions, we did not fully understand the implications of the new legislation that had just been passed at the end of 2025. And we had not yet engaged with the school district on the work that they had been doing or planned. Unfortunately, that came later. And so as we've been assessing it and seeing the potential impact, we wanted to bring that to council as soon as we could.
Thank you. And if I might continue, with the recommendation to change the funding strategy from the use of debt, and by drawing down the infrastructure reserve funds, have staff explored other opportunities than the actual use of the infrastructure reserve fund account for funding or perhaps changing the phasing or something to allow for different use of the funds or different methods of doing it?
Sure, Mr. Soulier. I'm just, for the AV, I think we're now sharing the wrong screen again. If we can maybe bring back the multi-person view. I have it on my screen, however, so I'm okay, but go ahead, Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, with respect to the phasing and how the project, the construction of the project actually is implemented, that will be a topic for a future council report, as will the details around amendments to the financial plan, proposed amendments to the financial plan, loan authorization, bylaw details, et cetera. Those would come in a future report. As noted in the report, there's sort of a natural phasing when we look at the physical space and from a construction point of view, what would make sense in terms of mobilizing and excavation and construction. And so we've articulated that in phases 2 and 3 in the report. You'll see those the collection of sort of project items in there. Perhaps I'll allow my colleague, Ms. Lachance, to comment on the specific reserve that we've identified, the infrastructure reserve, and whether there are other potential options for the district to consider.
Ms. Lachance.
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, we do have multiple capital reserves that can be used for capital purposes. The staff in reviewing the change in split from the approved financial plan took a look at the reserves balances and what's already been committed for other asset prioritized within the capital plan. And I've identified the infrastructure reserve as the ideal reserve. But that's not to say that, in future years, we're able to balance against those reserves. We haven't gone and done that extensive review in terms of rebalancing reserves. We'd be looking for council's direction in terms of phasing and costs before we would finish that recast. That would be coming back to council in a follow-up report.
Thank you. I don't have others in my speaking list with questions. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for granting me it, Mayor. Just as a follow-up then, thank you for that information, Ms. LaChance. And just, you did say that it would be the intent that that would come later. And at that time, would we also be looking at the life cycle costing that would be attributed to this facility over the term? Because I realize it's not apparent in the 5-year capital plan, so I'm just wondering how and when that would come to council too.
Ms. LaChance?
Excuse me. Yes, so absolutely. The intent within this report is to provide some of the operating cost impacts of the facility and then seek council's direction on the scope and scale of that building. Then once we understand that scope and scale and are able to move to Class A estimates, that's when we can bring back more reliable and accurate life cycle cost estimates for council.
Thank you. And I believe that's the next, if depending on what we move forward here, we'll give direction and we'll come back with Class A estimates. Is that my understanding? Okay. Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, so depending on what decisions are made tonight, we may need some additional time, but regardless, we're intending to bring a report in July with, at a minimum, refined costing and design based on whatever direction we receive today. If the design changes are more significant, then it will take more time to get those Class A estimates, so that could come later on.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Go ahead. Yep, Councillor Braithwaite, please go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry about the confusion of me losing connectivity there for a minute. I do have a few questions. And I know that when I was reading the report, that staff acknowledged that the converting the childcare space to multipurpose rooms may produce little or no meaningful capital savings because the redesign costs offset the reductions in the childcare specific features. So I'm wondering if the savings are negligible, if it's really wise to permanently lose the potential valuable community amenity of those spaces. And so I'm wondering about the recommendation of removal rather than preserving the long-term flexibility. If we could speak to that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, so one of the considerations that staff looked at was the fact that we are essentially designing a building for the next 50 years. So it's a long-term commitment. The spaces are designed to be flexible to a certain point to adapt over time. The type of structure that the design team has put together for us allows for that type of flexibility. But when we had the conversations with the province and the school district and started to get a better understanding of what is coming on stream in the short term in terms of the service provision, there started to be, it seemed that the need that we were actually going to be attempting to deliver was going to be met through the school district sites, perhaps even before we had this new facility open. And so that was a consideration we thought was worthy of council understanding, because it has changed since 2024 when the project was approved. The conditions are not only related to capital funding, but also the strategy around how childcare was delivered has evolved. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, these were new developments, and when we look at the long-term interests of the district's investment in this facility, we thought it was worth consideration.
Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Mute. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that answer. And I'm just wondering, if we did remove the childcare now, what realistic opportunity would there be to reintroduce it in the future? Or is there a good opportunity to do that if we did choose to, or if we had the need to?
Mr. Salier?
Through the mayor. So as I mentioned, there's a certain amount of flexibility. There would be costs related to the building system, so the design, the walls, the electrical, plumbing, heating. There'd be fixtures. It really would depend on, it's hard to speculate, but it would depend on what that service provision looked like. So are we talking the same 24 3 to 5 year olds? Are we talking about a different age group and the scale of that? So the short answer is yes, it's possible. And it would cost, but it's hard to predict the quantity of that cost at this point.
Thank you for that. And if I may continue, Mayor, I guess I struggle with knowing how much emphasis we can put on whether or not the school board will be coming forward with those predicted spaces. And so that's where I'm struggling a little bit on this. I would like to go now to some of the financial stuff around this. And I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about why the AAP wasn't recommended given the size of the borrowing, and what, if we know what the annual household tax impact for an average homeowner would be on the borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Ms. LaChance.
Thank you. Through your worship. The report does cover all three opportunities for approval of or process for the borrowing approvals. Exercising the approval-free zone is really something that you're going to look at as a first stop, because it is a used-up amount of room. So as you're looking to do multiple issues, any next issue in line, you would consider, should that be the path that this takes? Because eventually, when debt is outstanding, it will use up that room. I would say that would be staff's recommendation if it's available to us. Of course, the options are available to council to take any of those other approval processes. They do have implications around costs and staff time. That's a consideration. And so I'm happy to have my other colleagues jump in. I see Michelle would like to.
Ms. Hunt.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I think Ms. LaChance summarized it. The other piece for me, though, is I think, the community has been waiting a significant time for this facility. And, by taking one of the other alternatives, it is going to probably add another year in terms of, our ability to get this facility under construction. And so staff were weighing that as well in terms of the timeline to be able to actually, break ground and get this facility in the works.
And thank you for bringing that up, Mayor, if I may continue, because I do know that, given the scale of this project and the proposed design changes, it loads me to say this, but should we have additional consultation before finalizing the major scope reductions because of the childcare removal? I mean, I don't want to delay this project anymore, but I wonder what our community is going to think about us if we remove those childcare spaces with no ability to either turn them into toddler or infant spaces in the future, or to turn them into regular childcare spaces in the future. So I do worry about that, and I wonder what kind of how that would delay the process. And Ms. Hunt, I think that you just said it could be up to a year to delay that, and I'm just wondering if that is really accurate, and if we had to go back to the public to talk about this again, which I'm not suggesting we do, but we might have to.
It's almost a rhetorical question, but Ms. Hunt,
No,
did you
I'm
say
sorry.
anything?
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor, just to clarify, Councillor Braithwaite, the additional time there I was speaking to was with reference to the borrowing and whether or not we took the alternate approval process to go through borrowing. In terms of changing the design or going out for further consultation with respect to the childcare and changing the design, I will actually ask Mrs. Soulier to give us an estimate on what that might cost in terms of timeline.
Through the mayor, so in part, the response would be informed by the purpose of the consultation. If it was to get feedback on the potential alternative use of that space, that would be one thing. If it was simply to inform, that would be another thing. But I would say at a minimum, we'd be looking at 4 to 5 months probably of a schedule impact.
Thank you. And Mayor, if I may, my last question would be whether or not we have explored partnerships with nonprofits, childcare operators, and if grants, could grants become available again in the future if the space is preserved for childcare?
Mr. Lee, I think you kind of answered, we haven't directly sought service providers, but the model would be that we'd use a third-party service provider, but just for clarification.
That's correct. So we haven't engaged in discussions with any potential operators to date.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other questions for staff? Please go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I realize this is my second time, but I just wanted to go back to the AAP and understand something. In the event that you did use that model and you go to the public, what happens to the actual borrowing if your Class A estimate goes up during the period of time, the 1-year period of time that you take to seek that approval? Does that then absolutely limit your borrowing to the amount that you took to the public for approval?
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. Yes, it does.
So if there were cost increases, those would then need to come out of reserve funds? Thank you.
Yes, through your worship, we do, of course, accommodate that in our project risk register. We would be looking at making sure that through the course of the project that we would be able to raise sufficient funds without having to come back. We would look at those kind of cost escalations as extraordinary and may even be the result of a change in scope during the project. But we would set the course and ideally be able to provide that certainty for the approval process that the community would have engaged in to execute that project.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, your hand is up. I'm just want to make it clear whether that's a legacy hand you wish to get a follow-up
Yeah,
question.
it was for the second time, once you're looking at second-time speakers, Mayor.
If you have questions, go ahead and ask it. I have a couple, but you can go ahead.
Thank you. I just was wondering if we've actually assessed the current childcare demand and wait list within our community. And if so, and if the numbers that we received in the correspondence that we received are accurate, or if we know that they're accurate. And then lastly, what is the municipality's role in helping actually facilitate childcare access? Because I'm wondering what our actual role is in this, and if it's more of a provincial role or not.
Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, I can attempt to respond to these. So first off, with respect to the need in the community, we have relied on the expertise of the Ministry of Education and Childcare, and they have a specific office focused on strategic childcare provision. And so we've been in discussions with that office, and they provided the information that we shared tonight and in the report. The school district representative, and again, they have a dedicated office specific to childcare provision. They shared similar information. They talked about how the need for 3 to 5-year-olds is very much being met, and to the point of what was shared with 100% of families that are in need of that should be able to find that service in the next year. And then in terms of the district's role, I think there are, as I mentioned, there's a variety of sort of elements to the provision of care in the community. And so right from the infant toddler care through the 3 to 5 and school-age children, as I mentioned in my notes, the district has had success in meeting the needs for school-age children in particular with before and after school care and day camp programs. We obviously have the Neighborhood Learning Center and the full daycare that we operate there. The district also has regulatory powers that can support private daycare operations in the community. And so those, there are a range of options, but I would say that the purpose of looking at this specific space in the context of the changes that have happened in the last couple of years really is to try to crystallize what council would like to do with this particular project and the investments that may be required.
Thank you. And you did bring up the Neighborhood Learning Center, and it makes me think if we did over the next 1 to 3 years while the school board is catching up with implementing their spaces, is there any possibility that we could actually put additional spaces into the Neighborhood Learning Center, or would that be cost prohibitive?
Mr. Soulier?
That is, through the mayor, that is not something that staff have looked at. At this point, all of the spaces are full. We are at full capacity in our staffing complement, which wasn't the case earlier. And so now that we have all of the staff, we have a full daycare. The other spaces are not designed for that. We would have to go through that exercise and report back on the implications of that.
Thank you so
All done?
much.
All right, thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Before I go back to more second-time speakers, I might just ask a couple of quick questions and I'll come back. Just out of curiosity, is there any sense from, it's probably an impossible question to answer, but we've seen, I can't remember the strange doublespeak language being used, but there's been a lot of cancellations of capital projects from the province recently. Do we have any sense of whether or not these capital projects that are in the books for, say, childcare, are they completely approved at this point, or are they sort of in the approval process to the Ministry of Infrastructure? Or do we have a good sense of how secure their funding actually is at this point? Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, in my conversations with the representative of the school district, I did ask that question about how solid the approval is for these to go ahead. And I was advised that the funding is in place and that I think in 1 or 2 cases they're waiting on municipal approvals from Saanich. But there is, the funding is in place, the plans are in place, they're moving along, and the timeline for opening, as I say, in the next 2 to 3 years is an indication that they're in a strong position to complete these projects. They have other projects elsewhere in Greater Victoria that are not relevant so much to us, but they are earlier stages of their development than these 4 that we're focused on in our area.
Okay, great, thank you. Other question I have is just, I'm not entirely clear from the report, is what is at the end of the day, given the proposal of the 50-50 split of reserve and borrowing and the expected revenues from either childcare or childcare and general use space, or just general use space, I apologize for my voice, what is the net cost to Oak Bay annually with those 2 options, with the childcare option, without any, the provincial funding, or the general use space without provincial funding? And just, I'm trying to get my head around what is the net impact on taxes at the end of the day for those 2 options. Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, so on the operating side, we have assessed what the net impact would be for running the facility as currently directed by council with the childcare in.
Okay.
So
is that the 28,000?
The 51,000.
51,000.
Yeah, 51,000. So the 28,000 references that you're referencing relates to the park incremental cost, right. But overall with the park and the building, we're looking at a $51,000 net expense. With regards to the repurposing of the childcare space, we would need to go through that exercise of redesigning that north side of the building and confirming the capital costs of that, as well as updating the operating projections to relate to a different revenue stream than the childcare. And so that's information that we would anticipate being able to bring back to council in July.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. In addition, obviously, to the operating costs, there would also be the debt servicing costs associated with the borrowing. sorry, my computer's just died, and so I don't have the exact amount. I think Ms. LaChance has that, but I just wanted to, that is another impact to taxpayers in terms of servicing the debt.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm trying to get to, if I might, is like, what is the total, maybe setting aside the park improvements, which I think are all essentially set, maybe with some minor tweaks, but for the building perspective, I'd really like to get a clear understanding of what our sort of net cost to the taxpayers is for the approach with childcare, the approach without childcare. Also be curious if we actually borrow the whole amount, because ultimately we still have to borrow that money at some point, and so that ultimately does have some impact. So
Okay.
if you could share that, if you have it available, is the chance.
Yes, to your worship, and probably to the whole table. Everybody's wondering. So just if I could help frame it, because I do want to reiterate my colleague, Mr. Soulier, as he's mentioning, depends on the scope. And like you say, there's sort of incremental operating costs given the different options in front of council. But overall, we're still looking, and what's in front of myself in terms of cash flow forecast for the project is the remaining $26 million, which would be split 50-50 between reserves and debt, if council so chose. The current financial plan reflects double that. So it shows a entirety funding this project. The estimated fully borrowed implication for an annual cost was $2 million, which equates approximately 4% of taxation. But of course, that would be ushered in over time throughout the project. The project is currently cash flowed over a 5-year span, and so would gradually come to pass. I would mention that when we take that 100% debt funding plan and make that 50%, that just halves those estimates. So you're looking at $1 million in debt servicing. That's, of course, based on a 25-year amortization and a rate of 4.71%. That's today's rates, but they may have changed as I've been talking to you. So just know that as we go through and navigate this section of a capital project, we're often using very round numbers, and then we look to firm that up as we have a Class A and the appropriate scope. But just to be clear, that's $1 million in debt servicing, gradually impacting over time a 2% impact on taxation.
Yeah, obviously the not having, well, we don't know about the other $6 million, but not getting the $12 million grant is obviously very impactful in terms of the overall cost of this. So the other really sort of, I think, substantive question I have on this one is like, if, given that we've sort of gone down this path with the assumption of having some grant money to cover, we were almost guaranteed the childcare coverage, and now that's gone. We were hopeful for some of the federal grants because we were so well aligned with those grants. To this date, have not been successful. Like, what is the impact? Just scaling this back to really look at just a field house with washrooms, change rooms, sort of more in alignment with what we had before. Perhaps leaving the physical space available to a larger building that, should the other grants come in the future, we still have some physical space available to us to consider the larger build. Do we have any assessment of what that would look like to move forward with a much more restricted plan at this point? Mr. Soulier?
Through you, Mayor, we have not done that work. If that was the direction of council, we could go about developing essentially a field house building. You're talking about washrooms and change rooms, and that's sort of the primary focus, if I'm understanding you. Yeah, that would be an exercise that we would need to undertake. We have not done that work to date.
Fair, thank you. And I think just for my clarification, that we've had some correspondence and things on things like the dog space and a couple of other sort of little minor pieces. And so at this point today, you're looking for as clear a direction as we can give you, including things like those, if there's anything that we would like to see change from that overall plan, that we'd like to flag it now so that the Class A estimates come back with those changes. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That would be extremely helpful to have that clarity about anything in the plan, anything else in the plan that you would like changed or removed.
Okay, thank you for that. Then going back for second time speakers, I had Councillor Watson and I think Smart. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Smart Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few follow-up questions. With the Through you, Mayor, with the conversation around the table around a potential renovation at a later date to childcare, could staff please clarify again, is this a slab on grade building and what the logistics are of putting in a very plumbing heavy program potentially into a building that doesn't have a basement later and the significant extra costs in doing that later, if I am correct that it's a slab on grade. If you could clarify, thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Through your worship, yes, it is a slab on grade. If we were to do the design as flexible as we could, we might try and anticipate under slab plumbing and install that. Of course, as time goes by, childcare standards change and regulations change, so that could impact things. But we could make that under slab plumbing would have minimal impact on cost for flexibility.
Please continue.
Thank you. And my next question is just with regards to this current report that we have in front of us. I understand that we're all desperate for these extra questions that you obviously would need lots of time to go away and answer. But with this current report we have in front of us, my understanding is if we remove the childcare programming and move it to a multi-purpose space, there's no suggestion that we're saving any money by doing that at this point. Just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Graham?
Through your worship, in terms of capital costs, we're not seeing any savings. There might actually be a slight increase due to redesign fees. We would try and be, like I say, keep the design as flexible as possible, but there could be actually a slight increase, small but slight.
Smart?
Yeah, thank you. And then my last question is just with regards to, could staff just please clarify again the other grants that are still being pursued for this building? Thank you.
Mr. Soulier?
Let me just pull that up.
Through your worship, to Councillor Smart, yeah, it's the Building Community Strong Fund that we are pursuing. The previous one, the Green and Inclusive Community Building Program that we were unsuccessful for, we were told that our application would be immediately forwarded or would be forwarded to the Building Community Strong Fund to reinforce our application. We actually did send in a separate proposal as well and put in a sort of an expression of interest for that fund. So staff have been really diligent in trying to, to pursue that funding, and that is the Building Community Strong Fund.
So that's it. Okay, I move then. I'm going to go to Councillor Appleton as a first time with questions, and then to Councillor Patterson.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. So I guess probably for Mr. Soulier here, but I was going to ask a similar question just with respect to, because I have serious concerns given what we have seen lately about provincial investments in various capital projects and whether or not in, provincial investment, however announced, actually comes to pass. And so I appreciate Mr. Soulier's comments, just that he had actually explored that with the province. I guess I have a bit of a follow-up to that, and this is not actually for Mr. Soulier to answer, but seeing as how he was speaking with the province about exactly this, then maybe he can offer some context here. But so now I see that, the community childcare spaces, as noted in the report, hasn't had an intake since 2024, but obviously the investment is being made elsewhere, or funds for childcare spaces are being redirected into this school-based program. And I'm just wondering whether or not anything was offered as far as the rationale for that, and whether or not, there was anything offered from the province speaking to projects that, such as this, that municipalities had already worked hard to get shovel ready and are now sort of being left without investment.
Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, for clarity, my conversations about funding were with the school district to make sure that the projects, those 4 projects that we were discussing were in fact advancing. And conversations that I've had with the province about this program relate to a previous position with a previous employer, so I wouldn't want to get into that in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's, I guess I will then slightly editorialize as to, it's too bad that we don't have or that we're not seeing the investment in public childcare or public childcare spaces and spaces within our community. Those funds seem to be going to another, we value the creation of spaces because there's just a need for more spaces, but it's a shame that that's not available. I'm just wondering whether or not we can just, as noted in the report, I'm just confirming that, the district did receive word that it was unsuccessful in receiving the $12 million grant applied for under the Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund. Is there anything that, and of course that significantly impacts the project, obviously. Was there any information offered, can for the purposes of sort of communicating with the community about the reasons for that rejection? What were sort of some of those significant elements that led to this? I mean, I think if you're an average member of the community and you're looking at a project which has, gone through a significant amount of design and community consultation to try and find to try and design an appropriate project, as we said, fairly aligned with the standards. What did we hear as far as feedback associated with the rejection of that grant that accounted for why it was not approved?
Mr. Soulier?
My colleague, Ms. Morton, unfortunately is not available. She was our key contact in corresponding with on these grant applications. My understanding, though, is that we did not receive much in the way of feedback or detail about that.
Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, thank you very much. We did receive a letter, but it just really spoke to, we received this from the federal government, hundreds of thoughtfully prepared applications for meaningful projects. Due to the high level of interest, we regret to inform you that your project was not selected. So they were just putting it down to the need across the country.
All right, thank you. I go continue with the second time speakers, Patterson and then Braithwaite. I do want to get to some direction here, so as we move on.
Thank you, Mayor. And there has been so much discussion on the daycare part of this proposed development, and I certainly understand the challenges that young families are facing throughout the district, but I guess perhaps it's a bit disjointed for me because I certainly, was not something that surprised me because my liaison duties to some other bodies do expose me to what is going on in the discussions with the different school districts, school trustees, and childcare experts. And so the presentation materials that I was party to said that the provincial budget paused the $10 a day childcare program and proposed a replacement focused on expanding childcare services on school grounds, of course, as we have discussed tonight. And it was acknowledged that the former childcare subsidy did not achieve the intended outcomes. And many operators, this is operators of daycare facilities, indicated it constrained the delivery of high-quality, inclusive care. And I would anticipate that if we proceeded to make the opportunity for this within the Carnarvon development, that is perhaps the type of operator we would be looking at, because it would be very difficult they wouldn't get subsidization. And so it was coming from the operators, many of the operators, that the program that was in effect was actually constraining them. And so, and there was a lot of consultation that went on with the schools, and it was recognized that they could play a larger role in providing childcare services. And the consultation involved the school districts, educators, and representatives for children and youth and mental health professionals. So it was a fairly robust discussion that went on, and consolidated effort to find the best way through to providing child care in the communities that will work over the long term. And these discussions have expanded beyond the provincial framework to also the federal framework. So I am not optimistic that this will just change. I think that there's a lot of professionals in this industry that are solidly behind giving support to these changes that are being made. And certainly there was a recognition that within the province and across Canada, there is a need for school expansions, school replacements, and it seemed an opportune time to change the path that we were on. And I do note that in the 2026 provincial budget, there is $5 million in capital funding for infrastructure for communities to try to get those projects going rapidly, and then another 20 million for the operations. So those are already in the provincial program. And so that's the information I have, and it seems to have been actually quite well informed by those who have greater knowledge and experience in child learning than I have. So I'm not optimistic that at any time soon that a standalone would be covered under provincial subsidization, and it would be likely more apt that we would have to seek a private professional operator who would struggle perhaps with the costs and not return any capital.
I appreciate some of this context, but I
So-
also want to get to make sure
Yeah.
that getting asking questions and
And I'm also not confident that the other grant fundings will come about, because when I look at the recent awards, they have been awarding large centers and awarding communities where there are economic drivers. So, you know, I think we are in unfortunately a very tough position to having to make decisions about what takes place here. So with that, I will leave it, and I'm ready for the discussion on what we all want to do.
thank you, Councillor Patterson. You remind me of all the work done when we were struggling to find before and after school care. The time I spent talking to everybody I could from the province, inviting them to please invest in their schools and take on some of this responsibility. So I guess, yes, you can assign some of the blame to me on that. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much. I'll be really brief, Mayor. Plumbing and outside access is one of the questions I had, so thanks to Councillor Smart for asking that. And I apologize if I was offline when this question may have been asked, but it's around the green roof. And I'm just wondering if the removal of the green roof reduces the stormwater benefits, and if it affects any grant competitiveness or climate targets that we might have or be available for. Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
The first part of the, sorry, through your worship, the first part of the question, stormwater management. No, we have adequate, actually quite robust stormwater management on site. We have a large retention area underneath the courts, for example, that will hold the water almost like a rain tank and slowly allow it to be absorbed into the ground. The green roof, in terms of grants, there's been no direct request for those sort of functions. We would still be meeting all of the net zero and net zero carbon and net zero energy goals that we had previously projected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braithwaite. That concludes my speakers list for questions at this time. Is there any? So at this point, we have a recommendation here in terms of to revise the design and report back to council with a number of pieces there. I think what is left a little bit unsaid is whether we're keeping the childcare ask as is, if we're going to eliminate some of the space or reduce the size, or if we're going to redesign for multi-use within the same footprint. So I think it's just good for us to probably get the motion on the floor, and then we can perhaps speak to amendments to get to where we want to go to. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Just procedurally, Your Worship, there are 3 staff recommendations here, and we're going to be dealing with these separately, I would assume.
Yes, there are 3, and yes, I think the reserves question, I think we can leave to the end. I'd rather just really get some direction about the scope and scale of the project, and I think that might inform the secondary parts of it as to the borrowing.
So, Your Worship, I would make, so I'm going to make a recommendation or make a motion to move recommendation 1 on the staff report, but I will move recommendation 1 without the 2 components listed under A and B. So I am looking to direct staff to revise the design and report back to council on the final detailed design and Class A cost estimate, but without the 2 modifications listed under A and B.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Uplands, if you wish to speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship. So and I do very much appreciate staff's suggestions here and staff's input as to ways that the design might be modified. I am not in support of either of the 2 removal or replacements here that are suggested. I do believe that the green roof is a significant design component of the building. I think that it makes a significant impact to the sustainability of the building. I think it's important that council and the district show leadership as far as innovative design on new municipal buildings. So I do think this is an important component, and I do think that readjusting the solar panels in the way suggested does affect the design, the presentation of the building, and just how the building might be received. So I do feel that the green roof is an important component. I am pretty adamant and pretty focused on the idea of retaining the childcare space in the Carnarvon building. To me, this is a fundamental design component that council, in my view, established fairly early on with the redesign of the building. I can recall a time even before I was on council when the existing building, the existing childcare had been moved relatively recently from Carnarvon Park and into the, and everybody really appreciates the Neighborhood Learning Center. It's a fantastic facility, but people spoke to me really specifically about how important they felt it was to return childcare to that particular location. And I've really seen it as a focal point for the Carnarvon redesign since we started talking about it. So I think it's very important. For me, it's not simply a numbers game. I'm appreciative of the fact that new spaces will be created potentially at Uplands Elementary and in other facilities close by to Oak Bay, but I do think it behooves us as a district to demonstrate leadership on this and to execute those spots. I think they're going to be well used, and it speaks to us providing a community amenity for all at that location, and really diversifying the uses around that park makes it a very vibrant space. So I do feel that it is very important. I'm very disappointed in the change. Like I say, I'm all about creating spaces, but I am disappointed in I guess, and yet another example of sort of provincial rearrangement of priorities or change in tack as far as approach to different policies of this type. So I'm disappointed that support's no longer available. I still think it behooves us to move forward with providing that space, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Braithwaite, Smart, and then Green in my list, and Watson.
Thanks so much, Mayor. Yeah, I support the project moving forward and appreciate the work that staff have done to keep this project within the budget that we had from before. However, I'm not convinced yet as that the case has been made for removing the childcare space, particularly when the projected capital savings appears really limited if we did this. I think there's a couple of questions. If Oak Bay removes the childcare from this project, where's the municipality's future, or what is the municipality's future childcare strategy? And are we comfortable assuming that other agencies will permanently solve this issue for us?
Councillor Braithwaite, I just want to make sure that we're all very clear. The motion on the floor is the motion 1, but A and B are not included in the motion as it stands. So the childcare space is retained under this motion, as is the green roof.
Okay.
Just so we're clear. Doesn't change the nature of your comments, but just it sounded like you were, arguing against the motion when you were saying that. So I just want to make sure you're clear.
No, I'm not arguing against it at all. I'm quite happy that the childcare is not in there. As far as the green roof goes, I'm really torn on that removal. So I'm going to listen to my colleagues on their thoughts for that. And I'm also wondering whether Parks, Rec, and Culture Committee should be included in this discussion as well, because it does fall under. It's something that perhaps they would have some input into too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. In my speaking list, sorry, I flipped over my page. I have Councillor Smart, then Green, then Watson.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking in favor of the motion, speaking in favor of keeping the green roof and retaining the childcare, particularly to the green roof. There are so many benefits that our community was particularly emphatic about with this design feature, particularly with regards to green space, as well as aesthetics, rainwater, stormwater retention. We heard from staff about the thermal mass. There's also a longevity to the roof membrane being under a green roof, and just the biodiversity that that green roof would create. Speaking directly to the retaining the childcare, and why I really appreciate this motion on the table is that it's keeping the childcare, but also indicating a redesign will be needed, and what I would like to see. And hear from around the table here as to whether we need to add a particular motion with regards to it, would be to see staff explore other potential options for infant, toddler care, after-school care, potentially in combination with multi-purpose spaces, but retaining childcare. I think we're not seeing any financial benefit to removing it at this point, and I think our families in our community need a diversity of childcare operators, and it's the only way we're going to have control over that high-quality, inclusive care that was mentioned at this table. So I'm very passionate about keeping the childcare and open to it shifting slightly to be a redesign. Thanks.
Thank you. I have next Councillor Green and then Watson on the motion on the floor.
Yes, thank you, and I really appreciate this motion. I appreciate the fact that A and B have been removed. I think the green roof reflects our commitment, long-term commitment to climate change mitigation and to pro-environment initiatives that we've all talked about and that are listed as priorities, in fact, for this council. And I'm also relieved that the childcare space will be retained, and the reason I'm retained, not in the motion, but retained further along. I think small communities have a particular need for good childcare, for adequate childcare. I remember being a young mom in a small community, and it was a scramble to find anything at all. And so I completely empathize with parents at the moment who need daycare or preschool care or toddler care. So I'm hoping the staff will explore other partnerships, perhaps. We can't always rely on government funding. I suspect this will change, hopefully for the better. But in the meantime, I think we should be creative about the kinds of partnerships that we might pursue for creative daycare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Watson, you're next.
Yes, Mayor, if I may, I have one final question for staff before I speak, if I could do that. Yes, Mr. Soulier or Mr. Graham, please, I just want to understand again with respect to the current design for 3 to 5 year old daycare, which is what the program, design program was. How flexible is that space if it's designed as previously expected to being used for something else if there is no daycare operator in sight and that the spaces are not required because of other daycare that actually does come on stream? I'm just trying to figure out how future-proof for other uses the building is if there is no daycare operator.
Go ahead, Mr. Graham.
Through your worship, there'd be a number of questions we'd want to explore about what are the best sizes of multipurpose rooms for the programs we want to offer. But in terms of technical aspects, probably the only impact would be the washroom facilities. Obviously, infant washrooms, much smaller toilets, lower to the ground. So that would likely be the only impact, is a redesign of the toilet facilities. I hope that answered the question.
So yeah, just maybe to continue that, if after the fact, if you design for that and build it after the fact, if you go to modify those, which would what kind of implications would that have, changing the sort of scale of washroom facilities if you were changing that for a non-daycare use in the future?
Mr. Graham?
Through your worship, we'd want to explore what we're changing it to. The occupant load of the north part of the building could change the number of washrooms that are required. For instance, right now there are 3 water closets for childcare, and depending on the use of that space and the occupant load, we may require 4. So those options would have to be explored further.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think on the basis of what I'm hearing from staff and what I'm hearing on the table, first of all, I do support definitely the retention of the green roof. I think that is really part of our philosophical approach to how we're investing in new capital assets in the community. And I think it is really important, not just from an aesthetic point of view, but an environmental point of view. And I appreciate that we have an uncertain future. We can't predict it. And as long as the building, as long as the design program that we're anticipating for childcare can be morphed into something else, if that doesn't materialize, I'm okay with kind of staying the course as this recommendation suggests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. Is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I think I can understand how things are going around the table, so I'm going to perhaps play devil's advocate here and be a voice not in support of this. I keep in mind that initially this project started as replacement of a clubhouse that needed replacement because it did not have sustainable funding to maintain it. And in fact, Carnarvon Park as a whole did not have sustainable funding from the community. And so that was what we were attempting to remedy and put to right. And as projects often do, there was scope creep because we always have ideas about the projects. But I'm also guided by what we heard during the engagement on the 2026-2030 financial plan, and that was that double-digit tax increases are not sustainable going into the future. While the community strongly supports investment in core infrastructure, there was limited support for increased staffing and reduced support for discretionary spending and some of this I look as both discretionary and needed because we are trying to put into a better position a large park that has been really declining for several years and yet services a large part of the community. So I certainly the green roof would be good. However, I think that the solar panels on a conventional roof would also some way mitigate what we would like to do on the environment. But green roofs do require sustainability going forward, and I have not seen evidence that the funding will be in place to do that, and I know that staff have said that more of that will be coming. But right now, I don't have any basis for making a decision about life cycle costing for green roof relative in comparison with the solar panels. I'm also cognizant that this is one project that this council and future councils will look to, but there are still a lot of unknowns that we face going forward. And so there's other imminent capital projects that have not yet been fleshed out to the point where we can be actually weighing how best to allocate the district's funding. But we certainly know that we have to deal with emergency services, public works, municipal facilities, all the rest of our buildings, and with the marina project. And so I think that being cautious on this project is not unwarranted at this time. I'm also mindful of the fact that for a very small district, Oak Bay has and sometimes it's a good thing, but we do have a lot of recreational facilities relative to the size of the district. And the sustainability of those longer term is something that we have not yet looked at in depth, in fact. And we've had some information about the funding of our Parks and Rec services, but I think we need to have a better understanding of philosophically, how much will we subsidize, and what can we afford to subsidize. I also recognize the fact that that recreational facilities are attractive, and they are certainly more readily apparent than underground infrastructure is, but we have not fully funded our infrastructure, core infrastructure services. We are getting closer to full funding for that, but we're not yet there. And so what is before us, and what we as a council are expected to make a decision on, I feel that there's just not information, enough information provided to allow us to make an informed decision, especially a long-term decision, and one that's going to have implications on for 25 years on debt servicing, and so restrict planning for some of the other projects. I think these are all desirable and admirable goals to have, and I think staff have certainly responded to what they heard at some of the public engagements meetings, but I think that that could change when it impacts the bottom line for taxes. And but I can certainly understand why staff have brought the plan to us the way it is, and why there is a recommendation of some use of debt and then use of the reserve funds, because some of the smaller components of the project, if they were handled independently, I don't like to say that they're not worthy of securing debt, but obviously they are of a smaller amount, and so that I can understand how that is provided. But I don't support the motion as it's put before council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. So speaking to the motion, I will say I struggle with where we've ended up at on this to a degree. I really appreciate the comments that have been made around the table, and I think that they reflect, what we would like to see built there. I think there's a couple of things that I do reflect on this, though. One, the child care to this has always been integral to our plan going forward, and I think there's two halves of that. One is, and by advancing this motion, we carry forward that initial intent. But on the flip side of that, I think it was based on assumptions that are no longer true, and so we have this sort of financial reality of the $2 million a year, moving this forward as it is. And I think it's worth noting those assumptions, right? So one was, at the time, the province had promised to pay 100% of the capital cost of daycare. So there's essentially, that was removed from our cost calculations. We were anticipating a pretty good chance of getting federal grants. We didn't count on that, but that was another up to $18 million that was potentially available to us. And we even had some conversations about perhaps giving some conditional approvals of this subject to grants because of the high cost. To my mind, the primary driver of this project, the primary asset of this project to the community is the park. It's the splash park, it's the playgrounds, it's the all-wheels park. It's the improvements to the drainage, it's the improvements to the walkability. Those are the parts that every member of the community can use and really do have to advance. I am not going to support the motion as it stands right now. And really, just at the end of the day, those assumptions are no longer hold. And I do think that I think we're in a, I'm not sure I entirely believe the province that they're going to be funding these pieces, but I think we kind of have to trust them. And I do recognize that we have the obligation here for providing childcare is the province's, just like healthcare. It is not municipal. So we do provide childcare. It's part of our services that we provide in the community through the Neighborhood Learning Center. It is not an obligation of ours. In fact, the childcare that was provided here moved to the Neighborhood Learning Center and continues. I do hear, what we hear from the community is that there is simply not sufficient childcare in the community right now. And I do hear that. But I also recognize that our timeline for completing this and turning it on is directly in alignment with what's happening with the provincial projects. And so we're going to have a lot of childcare coming online at the same time with no certainty that that's going to be meeting the needs. So to my mind, I think this is firmly in the park itself. All of the park improvements, I believe, are fully need to have. I think we have a commitment to the province, or to the public, that we will provide those. My feeling on this is that the building itself, the scale of this building, the cost of this building, given that all of the underlying financial opportunities, and granted, there's still one grant potentially available. If I weigh that $30 million against the lack of the income we're going to be making in the reserves, the total weighted cost in those pieces is very substantial. And so I think Councillor Patterson touched on a few of those, but we do have multiple municipal buildings. We have some potential housing projects that might be coming, forward in time that we'd like to be able to contribute to. We have our public works site and building. We have public safety building or buildings. We have the marina project. There's a number of things that we absolutely have to fund. And I really struggle with this level of funding when, as a region, we provide 4 rec centers, which are somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 or 75% used by people outside of Oak Bay, but are subsidized to the tune of $4.5 million a year. And we're looking at adding to the couple of million dollars to that total, $1 or $2 million. I think we have to think very hard and long about whether or not that value is being seen. So I appreciate what I've heard around the table is that the comfort level is there for the majority of council, but I do think there is a concern here that, again, this is always going to be a balance of value versus benefit. And to my mind, we already ended up on this thing. It does not cross that threshold for me at this point. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Councillor Smart, you wish to speak again?
Thank you. I just wish to put forward an amendment just to see if it would help provide some further clarity with how to move forward with this motion.
Or you can make a motion.
That staff proactively seek a child care provider for the new space to inform the design of the child care moving forward.
I'm just going to turn to staff before I take a second. I'm not sure that's required at this point. I mean, we can provide the Class A estimates without a child care provider, I believe, but is the assumption here that it might be 0 to 2 kind of childcare, and that would change the design, Councillor Smart? I'm just trying to understand what the motion is asking.
The motion is with regards to, in my experience, successful child care facilities have a provider on board before the building is constructed, because there is a lot of variation despite the guidelines to how that space might be designed. And we are also wanting it to inform, in this case, the ability to have confidence in a provider as we invest in this space. So it's about retaining some interest earlier during the design process to ensure the success of the project.
So is it just, and just for my clarification, you're saying that the project is conditional upon finding a provider? No, just that you just ask staff to seek one. Okay. Just, Mr. Sweeter, I'm going to go to you before I seek a seconder to make sure that we have a language that achieves the goal that the Councillor Smart wishes to achieve.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and through you, just for clarity, the 3 to 5 year old service provision that we've currently designed to did include input from an operator, essentially our staff who operate the Neighborhood Learning Center. So we have that. If we're talking about infant toddler changing the service provision, then that would be helpful clarity.
Councillor Smart?
This motion was around more potentially finding a partnership in the community early that could help inform the design. So it's not about the good work that staff has already done. To me, this motion without A and B, which I am supportive on, doesn't so much say that there might be a flexibility to, like, what are we redesigning? I think we need to indicate around this table if we're open to the fact that a provider might come forward that wants a slightly different model of childcare. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not, just for my clarification, the motion right now doesn't require a redesign at this point, correct? It's just moving forward
I
with
believe
childcare.
the wording actually has the word redesign in it. Perhaps we could read that again. It says,
Fair.
yeah.
I guess because there's no revisions to the design.
Yeah.
That language is a
I
bit redundant.
assumed that we would have moved option 1B if we wanted no redesign. So, yeah, the motion is to revise right now.
So my understanding is the motion is to not revise the design. So it is, and my apologies because this is a very large report and it takes me 2 minutes to scroll up to the top of it again. Option B is to move it forward without any changes. So that is essentially your ask?
We didn't move option B.
No, fair enough, but the motion on the floor is, I think if it results in option B and that language clarification, I'll turn to the mover and seconder.
Just for clarification, Your Worship, you're clarifying that the intent of the motion as presented would essentially mirror what was presented as an option in the staff report as option 1B, detailed and costing analysis without revisions to the current design.
Yes, that's, I think,
So I would confirm that as the mover of the motion, that would be my intent, yes, is to continue with design.
and Councillor Smart, you were, I think, the seconder for it, so.
Yeah, interesting. I was seconding the motion as read, which had the word revise in it. So perhaps we need to reevaluate. I mean, I'm supportive of the motion that I voted for, but it sounds like the motion has now changed.
Well, if there's not consensus to just switch the language from option 1A with those changes to option 1B, which seems to achieve the same goal without asking for any revision of the design, then I think that's the intent, but you're not supportive of that. So right now we have 1A.
I guess I'd ask for another seconder then, because I'm not 100% supportive in that design
I
without
would
conversation.
second option 1B.
So I'm going to just, procedurally, we have a motion live on the floor. So
But it would be acceptable, Your Worship, for me to withdraw my motion at this point.
we'll turn to the seconder if that's acceptable to the.
I think we have to because we feel like we voted on entirely different motions, so.
So I'll consider that withdrawn with the consent of the mover and seconder, and you would like to change it to motion 1.
Just for clarity, Your Worship, for absolute clarity, then yes, I would move option 1B. I'm just focusing on that. What I want to be clear on, Your Worship, is that we're doing 3 separate pieces here. We're doing option, recommendation 1 centers around the design element, and the other 2 are related to funding. So
Correct.
I would move option 1B, specifically the first portion that speaks to design and not the further point listed under funding options.
I'm just going to read that aloud so everybody at home is following along, can follow along. Council directs staff to proceed with the Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan as presented and report back to council with the Class A cost estimate.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Okay, so just we're clear. That is a cleaner version of the approach. So everybody's had a chance to speak to that motion, although we've changed the official numbering of it. It has the same outcome. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
I wouldn't mind speaking to it because it's a different motion than I had intended. I'm not sure if I will support this motion. I am very much in favor of keeping the childcare. However, with the new information around the 3 to 5 year childcare being provided, I was hoping to be able to give staff a little bit of leeway, potentially to look at whether that space would be better served for after-school care or infant toddler care. At the end of the day, I want it to be childcare that's well used in the community, but I do have some concerns about us going ahead with building a 3 to 5 year childcare facility based on the information that staff has now presented today. So I don't know if there can, I'll just quickly ponder if there can be an amendment that might suggest that, but I don't know if maybe the mover could just clarify that they want it to be no redesign exactly as is. That would help me.
I'm just going to speak because we speak to the motion. The motion keeps it as is, which is the design currently accommodates a 3 to 5 year childcare space. Motions or for amendments, Councillor Green.
May I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
What is the need for childcare in the 3 to 5 age group in Oak Bay? Do we have those figures? Thank you.
Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, the best information that we have been provided, the most complete, I guess, came from the province to say that in the next year, 100% of the families that require 3 to 5-year-old care will have options available. That service will be provided in the community.
Action speaks louder than words. I don't know if I am confident in that information, not because you're giving it to me, but because the province is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smart, I know you wanted to just explore the possibility of having staff explore.
Yeah, I will support the motion. I guess I just want to vocalize that if something comes to staff's attention with regards to being able to provide a greater childcare need in the community that is a slightly different design, I guess I would hope that they would come to council. But maybe that's more of a question to staff of whether they need a more specific motion from council around that.
So to staff, we're asking to come back with the Class A estimate, which requires fairly detailed expectation of service provision. At this point, it's essentially built in at 3 to 5. I guess the question is, if you leave this room and in conversations with the province, you recognize that there is a gap, and those changes would have to be, building a Class A estimate would require changing the design. Is there flexibility in staff sort of delegated authority to kind of consider that? Or would you, if that was the will of council, would you like to hear that allowance to do that exploration at this time? Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Because it is a significant redesign to go from 3 to 5 to infant and toddler care, as staff have mentioned, it is a different type of facility and has, will accommodate a different number of children, then I really think we need some clarification on that. Alternatively, we could report back if we, additional information, but that's going to slow the process down. I think right now, if we're going to move ahead, we have to move ahead and knowing exactly what council's looking for in terms of that design.
Thank you. So the motions on the floor right now is just to maintain the current status. We have heard that there's likely not as high a demand for that as we had originally anticipated when this project started. Okay, I don't see any other hands to speak to the motion. So actually, I'm going to raise one other point just because I did raise it earlier, and it's just totally up to the will of council, but I didn't want to forget it because I think it does have to come as an amendment at this point. Are there any other changes to the plan, i.e. things like the dog park or the walkway or anything else in here that people would like to see modified from what is in place right now? That's my question to council. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I do remain concerned about the location of the dog park, but I understand from previous conversations with staff that there's not another ideal location for it. So if it's a choice of having to keep the dog park or not have the dog park, I'd hope that we could mitigate those concerns either operationally or in another way, because I don't want to lose the dog park, but I do remain concerned about its location.
At this point, we need any changes would have to come by way of motions. I too share some of the concerns about the dog park, but prefer the sort of more hands-off approach we use at Windsor Park and so forth than having these dedicated. But I'll leave that. I'm not going to vote for the main motion as it is, so a bit of a moot point at this point from my perspective. All right, I'm not seeing any other suggestions for changes, so I'm going to go. Oh, Councillor Watson.
I just wanted to make a final comment before you call the vote. And I think that this is a difficult one, and our job is here to make decisions under uncertainty. And that's hard to do. And we have a growing distrust of the province and what it's going to produce for capital funding or even operating funding for things. But we did have a vision for this space, and it is a 50-year asset. So it's 2 generations of families in the community. And I think at this point, given the amount of time already that's been put into the project and thinking about it and developing the program, it's okay to stay the course, because over 50 years, there are going to be some changes to this building inevitably anyway. And I'm comfortable with that. The community is counting on us to move forward with something that they have wanted for a long time, a hugely degraded asset in that park. And this is a bit visionary, and I think it's good regardless of where the money is coming from. I think it makes sense to spend money on this asset in our community. And I understand Councillor Patterson's fiscal concerns around many other things that we should take on, but I also think that it's our job at the council table to build community and build our public assets, and the underground ones, but also the ones that we see and are used. 50 years is a long time, and I think that we should move forward with confidence that we would be doing the right thing for Oak Bay by moving this project forward as we currently envision it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And Councillor Braithwaite? She's there.
Sorry, I'm in favor.
Thank you. And those opposed? I have Councillor Patterson and myself opposed. That carries. We will look forward to the Class A estimates coming back. We do ask people not to clap or cheer or boo, but it's all right. I appreciate that. So it's hard to not do that sometimes. We move to item 7.2, renewal of recreation management software.
Sorry.
Your worship, you've got.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. After all those questions about this, we move on to the second part of the, I'm just going to call everybody's attention back to the table here. We just have the second part of the request here, which is the financial aspects of this. So, Councillor Appleton.
Your worship, so with respect to component 2, I would move, just for clarity, because I was not as clear as I should have been last time, I will move option 2A in the staff report that council endorse a funding model that consists of 50% from district reserves and 50% from long-term borrowing.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll just raise my point of I not supporting the main motion. I do think that this is not the right use of our borrowing capital, but I'll leave that there. I think it'll have broad support amongst the table. Any other comments? Councillor Patterson?
I was just going to say what you just said, so yeah, I'm not supportive of this, although I understand it. And anyways, we'll leave it there.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I also am not supportive of it, but I understand it as well. I think originally the vision for Carnarvon Park, my understanding from the public that I spoke to was not quite this grand. They wanted a new field house, they wanted daycare, they wanted a splash park, and they wanted upgrades. And I'm not sure this grand vision is fully aligned with what they wanted. So I will not support this particular motion. Thank you.
Okay. Just for clarity, the motion that's on the floor right now is that council endorse a funding model for the costs of the previous approved motion that consists of 50% from the district reserves and 50% from long-term borrowing. So it's really just specifically about how we're funding it, if it's coming out of reserves or borrowing, and the model suggested is 50-50 at this point. So I'll leave that there. So the motion on the floor is related to the borrowing process. There was a sliding scale there of how much borrowing and how much reserves. So this is the approach in front of us. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? I have, so I have Councillor Braithwaite opposed.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. I tried to get in to add my comments, but I was just going to say that I would be opposed to this motion based on the same reasoning as the other councillors around the table.
Okay, so just for the record, I now have a motion on the funding model of 50-50. I have 3 in favor. I have 4 opposed. Councillor Patterson, Green, Braithwaite, and myself opposed. So I'm going to turn to one of the people who opposed and make a motion to suggest a different funding model in terms of percentages of how to fund this project.
Sorry, Your Worship, I think if you look at the other option, if you're choosing a different borrowing approach, we would want to we will report back. So I think option 2B is that council could choose to direct staff to develop an alternate funding model
True, but it does ask to consider
Oh,
the
yes, sorry.
proportion.
Yeah.
So I do want to just get some direction from council as to, and I'm going to probably go to Councillor Green or Councillor Braithwaite on this one because you're the two votes that voted in favor of the project but against the funding model. So I just perhaps if you could give some clarity of where your comfort with the funding model would fit in terms of the percentage of the using reserves versus using borrowing. Councillor Braithwaite?
I think for me, Mayor, I'm a little bit, I have a little bit of trepidation around the 50% from the long-term borrowing, only based on some of the other projects that we'll have coming up. If I could be convinced to go the other way, if need be, but that's kind of where I'm at right now, is I struggle with the long-term borrowing piece of it.
I'm going to have to ask you to make a motion. The motion language that's under option 2B, which is on page 9 of 47 in the report, says that the wording is that council directs staff to report back with the impacts of an alternate funding model for the costs of the Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan that considers and some approximate proportion. And then we'll see if there's support.
I would then need to know if I was to make a motion around 75% from reserves, if that's feasible to take 75% of this project out of reserves.
So the motion is to basically endorse, to report back with the impacts of that change. So just so you understand. So that's the recommendation. So what you're moving here, if you want to move that, is a report back with those implications.
Okay, so I will make a motion to report back with the implications of funding the Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan 75% from reserves and 25% from long-term debt.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? I'm not seeing one. So perhaps we can try someone in the other direction. Okay, moved and seconded. Councillor Braithwaite, you started to motivate before there was a seconder, but is there?
Yeah, I just, again, my concern would really be around the long-term, taking money out of our long-term debt for this particular project when we have so many other projects coming up. I would like to see if we could perhaps fund it more from reserves than from long-term debt.
Okay. I'm looking around this table. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Speaking against the motion, so much of the reserve funds that we now have in place for the district, we acquired by presenting to the community our goal for those reserve funds. And we collected additional tax revenues every year for several years now to fund reserves and primarily infrastructure reserves for the district. And I really think now to use those funds for a purpose other than what they were actually collected for does not add to confidence building that we need and trust from the community. I think we have to say what we're going to do and do what we say and not change course. To have increased the tax levels to double-digit taxes each of the years for now several years, to build up the reserves, finally be getting to a position where those are more stabilized and we have a better path forward, is not the time now to deplete them for, in my estimation at least, to deplete them for discretionary purposes. And so I can't support this. I think that I understand that we don't want to tie up the debt borrowing because we do face so many other projects, but I spoke to that earlier on, so I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion request? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I guess I just do have a procedural question about even debating this issue. Having now approved direction on the project, it seems to me that we have to approve sources of funding for it. So if we have an impasse here, where does that leave the project? I'm really not following this discussion. At some point, we have to come up with a funding formula that's between reserves and borrowing. So will this discussion just continue until we get to 2 percentages that everybody agrees to? I'm really confused about what's going on right now.
Unfortunately, yes. I think where we're at this piece, I'm going to make a suggestion that I'm going to get to the question on this suggestion. If it doesn't have support, we can try the opposite way and put more money into borrowing. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to make a plea that since the majority of council, in fact, significant majority, 5-2, support the project, that we move forward with the staff recommendation on this one. But let's try the other two. So right now, we have a motion right now which leans more heavily on the reserves, 25-75, and the report will come back with the implications of that, including probably the availability of what's in those reserves, whether we can do that or not. Councillor Braithwaite, you wanted to add something?
Mayor, if this motion doesn't go forward, then I'm going to put the original motion back on the floor and vote on that, and I will actually change my vote.
Okay, given that would give a majority. Well, I'll treat this one first. I'll treat this motion in the solemnity of which it deserves, which is that we have to consider it. So is there any other discussion on the motion? Again, this is to give a direction to have 75% reserves, 25% borrowing as a direction for a report to come back. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Green, Watson, Appleton, myself, Smart, and Patterson opposed. That did not have success, Councillor Braithwaite.
I'm going to then put the motion back on the floor, if I may, if that's legal, that the council endorse a funding model for the cost of Carnarvon Park redevelopment plan that consists of 50% from the district reserves and 50% from long-term borrowing.
I'm sure we'll get a seconder for that. Okay, having had a debate for one other option, I think we probably don't need to talk about this too much. I'll see if there's support from the committee, and I think with the announced change of swing vote that there is, all those in favor and those opposed, Councillor Green, Patterson, and myself, that does carry. So since we already have that analysis, there's no additional analysis to be done. So thank you for that. And the last option here is the debt authorization options. And again, this is the recommendation here is that using the approval-free liability zone for borrowing the money.
Your Worship, I would move option 3A in the staff report to use the approval-free authorization.
Moved and seconded. Okay. I think we all understand the ramifications of this. Does anybody I think there's probably will have people opposed, but I think for the general purposes as opposed to the specifics, go ahead, Councillor Smart. I'll go Councillor Appleton as the mover first.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to motivate briefly, I think that there have been some really positive, I think there's been good debate on this, and I think there's been some good comments made about just borrowing in general and how we approach it with the community. For my purposes, under a lot of circumstances and for a lot of types of borrowing and some of the borrowing that will be coming for the community, especially for things like the protective services building, I would not actually support this approach. I would not support this type of approach and would seek public input to that type of borrowing. The reason that I support this approach for this particular project is because of the extensive public engagement that's gone into the project and the very strong, in my view, need for timeliness to move forward with the project. We've seen capital projects of all types. I don't think anybody would describe themselves as wholly comfortable with the cost of this project, given how much it's inflated just over the last couple of years. That speaks to the need for being timely and acting quickly to get shovels in the ground and get this much needed project for that particular neighborhood of Oak Bay underway. So I just would take the opportunity here to say this is the motion that I've put forward as far as this alternative approval, but I would not take this course in general for most types of borrowing. I have heard the comments around the table about the concern about borrowing overall. I share those concerns. And overall, the debt situation for the district needs to be carefully managed. So I just wanted to just make that point at this juncture, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smart, your stead.
Thank you. That described quite adequately what I was going to share as well. We've had such incredible engagement on this project in general going forward. I very much support thorough engagement on debt borrowing, but in this particular case, the expediency of getting this project underway, considering how long it has taken to get to this point, is very important, and I have great confidence in what I've heard from the community about their support for this project.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll just speak briefly. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And while there has been extensive community engagement on this, and I know certainly the community is favored a lot of what they saw, but I do recall what they asked for originally. And I think that because the magnitude of this is going to be quite impactful on Oak Bay's budget, so I would also like to be able to support this, because I would like to see Carnarvon Park redeveloped for certainly the playing fields and the clubhouse and all of the things we originally set out to do, because the area has been waiting for it for so long. But just the way it is moving forward, I don't have confidence that when the reality hits people about what this is going to cost them on taxes, and it's over a long term, and it changes the basis of that, I think that we need to clarify the financial aspects of that. And if I may ask a question of staff on this, so when these reports come back to council, will they be subject to public input at that point in time?
Yes, they will. It's a decision point of council, so it'll be for public input.
Then with that clarification, thank you very much, then I will support what is put forward on the basis that the community will have input at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
I would prefer the assent of electors. I know that people are talking about wait times, but we're talking a 7-month difference between approval-free liability and assent of electors, 7 months. I don't think that's a long time. I think this is a very important project. I really appreciate all of the staff time that's gone into this. It's been extensive, and we have spent a lot of time on this, but certain things have changed, and I know that overwhelmingly I heard it was too large scale. It wasn't what people were envisioning. They were envisioning improvements, of course, in buildings and so on, but I don't think they were envisioning something this grand, as I said earlier. So I would rather support the assent of electors, so I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking? And probably just seek anybody speaking in opposition at this point. Okay, I guess since I think I've heard really good arguments on both sides of this one, and I do think, given the other decisions that have to go forward, and probably the approach taken is probably the most rational one. I do think, though, it's interesting. As I was listening, I think philosophically I might have a slight disagreement. I do agree that the level of consultation would be a check in the favor of doing this through the current model proposed, because I think it's had lots of public input into those pieces. I don't know that we've had as much robust. I think where I maybe fall back a little bit is that I tend to think of things that we require. We need public safety buildings. We need some of the roads and water pipes and so forth that we're going to be looking for borrowing as well. I actually see those on the other side of the equation, where given that we have some delegated authority to do what we need to do under the requirements, that those are the areas that I would probably rely less on the assent approval process. As I said, I think in this case it probably, whereas I'm not going to support the motion, but I do understand it's logical for it to go forward given the arguments that have been made at this table. Okay, I'm going to call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? And those opposed? Myself and Councillor Green opposed. That does carry. I think that's it for this item. I think we have a project. I think it's going forward, and I think it's coming back for final approval shortly. With minimal changes. So thank you for all the work that's gone into this, and to all the public who have provided input and all these pieces. It's been a lot of moving pieces. I am going to keep moving because we are now at 9:30, which is an hour behind where I was anticipating us being at this point in the meeting. So I'm going to move us along and focus on areas that we need to spend some time. But Mr. Soulier, you're not off the hook completely yet because we have the requirement for council approval, given the cost of the software for the Parks and Rec system. I think the report's pretty straightforward, but if you wish to give a brief introduction, you're welcome to.
Mayor, I think the report is fairly straightforward. I just want to recognize my colleague Camille Rock, Manager of Administrative and Reception Services, is here to support with any questions you may have. Thank you.
Ms. Rock, welcome. And I appreciate it's not much fun sitting through a whole 2.5 hours of a meeting to not have much conversation on your one item that comes before council. But there may be some questions of council, so I'll turn to council. Any questions for staff on this request? Don't see any, so perhaps I can get someone to move the recommendation. Moved. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Thank you for the work on going through this process and laying out the pros and cons of the different approaches within this. So I was going to reflect that when these decisions are like this, it's reflected very good staff report that outlines all the questions that captured all the questions that we had. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. We do have next an appointment of the interim Chief Financial Officer. I think clear here on this is a procedural piece to cover these pieces. I'm going to just seek someone to move the motion. Moved and seconded. I am going to say a few words to Mr. Chance at the end of the next session, but for now, we'll just leave it there for this piece. Is there anything, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We now move to reports and memorandums, and this is subject to public input. If anybody wishes to provide input, you can raise your hands online, or I actually don't think there's anybody in the room left to speak to it, so we'll take that piece. So with that, I invite Mr. Chance to make an introduction, and I understand we have KPMG here with us as well. So, but Mr. Chance, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to invite my colleagues up. Faisal, if you mind joining me as well. And Liette, can you join us here? Is that okay? Assume the regular position. Thank you.
The annual audit sitting position.
That's right,
yes.
that's right, yeah.
Welcome,
It feels
Ms.
like deja vu, yes. So thank you, through your worship. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the district's 2025 Statement of Financial Information. The staff report provides the annual financial results with comparative analysis. And attached, you will find the 2025 Statement of Financial Information in its entirety for approval, the KPMG Audit Findings Report for receipt, and the new Development Cost Charge and Amenity Cost Charge Annual Report. This evening, I'm joined by Faiza Misbah, the district's manager of financial operations, who has been instrumental this year, along with KPMG, in delivering these results this evening to council. Together, we would like to also thank staff and finance and across the district who supported the delivery of a successful audit. I'm also joined, of course, by KPMG, the audit partner, Liette Bates-Amer, who you will all be familiar with, quite familiar with the district's file, and has been a great supporter as we've navigated growth and change within the district. Just before I invite KPMG to present their audit findings to council, I do want to provide a brief presentation. I will try to keep that brief, knowing that your worship is off the original timeline. Annually, staff prepare financial statements in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which are then subject to an independent and external audit. As required legislatively, the audited financial statements require approval prior to May 15th by council. Additionally, as required by Section 2 of the Financial Information Act, Council is asked to approve a number of supplementary schedules as detailed early in the report. Touching on the financial results very briefly, the district again has made material investments in renewal of capital infrastructure, with additions totaling $22.1 million in 2025, reflecting Council's commitment to a path of sustainable service delivery. Also of note, the accounting surplus was higher than compared to prior year results, totaling $15.2 million, but reflects discipline in operational spending with expenses favorably below budget and a utilization of those additional revenues directly to support long-term sustainability. It is important to note that the 15.2 million accounting surplus translates to a modest budgetary surplus of 0.4 million or 400,000. The difference is due primarily to the difference between public sector accounting standards and rules and the cash-based budgeting approach to set taxation rate each year. The 0.4 million is down off of prior year. This decrease absolutely reflects a greater precision in managing budget variance. The district remains in a strong and stable financial position. New and notable for council within the financial statements would be the implementation of the development and amenity cost charge bylaws that were approved by council early in 2025, with those charges translating to a new stream of deferred revenue. This has been incorporated into the financial statements, but advisable for council that this is new. Additionally, there's an annual report required that has been prepared and attached in attachment 3. Of note also for council is that we did enhance note disclosure under note 4 and note 13. Note 4 is the deferred revenue, which previously provided a fairly basic schedule in the accompanying notes to financial statements, but has been expanded, in particular to provide additional detail on unearned revenue balances, restricted grants, and newly collected DCC and ACC charges. Additionally, note 13 is the financial plan reconciliation note, which reconciles the financial plan bylaw to the financial plan used in the financial statements for comparison. That note has been modified to now more clearly show differences between the public sector accounting standard treatment and that used for budget to help the public navigate. So I just, one comment to thank those that in the community that provide feedback to the finance team and allow us to make those enhancements each year. Staff are recommending that council approve the 2025 Statement of Financial Information, receive the audit findings report, and receive the DCC-ACC report. And of course, staff would be recommending that upon council's receive KPMG's presentation this evening. If amenable, Your Worship, I'll pass back to you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Ms. Bates-Emer, welcome.
Hi, everyone. So I will try to be brief. You've all received our report. I'm just going to speak to the highlights or things that point out things that are new for this year or different, and meet my required communications at this stage. In terms of the status of our audit, we are substantially complete. The last few steps would be having the discussion with council tonight. And then once you have accepted the financial statements, we're in a position to sign. We also collect the rep letter as of that same date today, which I think we already have. And we provide our opinion, which is included in the draft financial statements, anticipated to be the same as in prior years, a clean audit opinion or unqualified audit opinion that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. Last year, there was a new section in the auditor's report around other information because we did receive the financial package that management prepares that goes along with the financial statements and includes the financial statements before we signed off. And we do have a requirement to review that other information and determine whether or not there are any material inconsistencies with the financial statements. So we have reviewed that, and that paragraph is included in our opinion. The materiality that we used in the audit this year was 1.4 million, which was up from 1.2 million last year. The materiality has trended upward in line with your increases in expenses. We drive our materiality off of a gross benchmark of total expenses. The 1.4 million is about 2.5% of prior year's total expenses, a lower percentage of the actuals for this year, which are 61 versus the 56 that we determined the materiality off of. So probably had a bit of room to go even higher and stay at a similar benchmark or percentage of the benchmark as we had in prior years. With the materiality set at 1.4 million, we are required to report anything back to you that was adjusted or that remains uncorrected in our audit that's greater than 70,000. So we'll see that in a minute. Just a reminder that the materiality level that we set, obviously, if there was to be an error greater than that, we would have to have a qualification. And the materiality level is meant to represent the maximum level of error that could be in your financial statements before a user of the financial statements might have made a different decision if using these numbers to make an economic decision.
Ms. Bates-Seymour, I think we should be skipping forward in slides. I think there was a slide on materiality, and I'm just not sure that we're still on the title page. Are we?
Yeah, my apologies. It wasn't required for the presentation today.
Okay.
My apologies. I should have notified corporate services.
Okay, no worries.
I'm trying not to do a page flip of that, so I'll just
Fair enough.
speak
Thank you.
quickly to the things that I need to point out. In terms of risks identified in planning for this audit, there's just the one that I report to you every year that we're required to identify in planning for all audits that we perform, large and small, which is the risk of fraud due to management override of controls. We've addressed this risk with our journal entry testing, looking at any significant estimates or unusual transactions. Nothing to report here in terms of addressing this risk. The report goes on to discuss, well, there is a page around mandatory inquiries of those charged with governance. So we present that slide to you every year, I think, and you know, you have that ahead of time. And if you had comments to make to us with regards to fraud or any of the district's policies for reporting fraud incidents or non-compliance with laws and regulations, that type of thing, you can bring that to our attention. We've asked all of the questions on that slide already of individuals within the organization already. So I'm not expecting to hear anything new, but those are required to put in front of you. The results of our work around sort of our other areas of risk in the file, revenues, AR, deferred revenue, capital assets, expenses and payroll, and then cash investments and debt or treasury. I won't go through everything that we've done in all those sections. It's all included in the report. I will just point out that as a result of our procedures in the revenue and deferred revenue section is where we had just identified a couple of corrections that were made in the financial statements. One was 133,000 of amounts that needed to be recognized in the financial statements no longer needed to be deferred. And then just reclassifications between two liability accounts. So we found that holdbacks payable were held in deposits. So deposits usually either turn into returns of funds or revenues, and the holdbacks are sort of more of a typical payable that would be in the accounts payable. So those were reclassified in both years. Nothing else to report in terms of adjustments coming out of the work. So our summary of adjustments is included in the report, and it just has those couple of items, the reclassifications and then the small increase in revenue due to bringing in the those expired, I think it was expired passes that needed to be brought in. So very small change in the annual surplus as a result of audit adjustments, just an increase in revenue of 133. In terms of internal control deficiencies, we have not identified any significant deficiencies in internal controls. We do provide a letter to management describing some of the other control deficiencies that we have found in current or prior year. So we have issued that letter. It's included in the appendix here. There was one new other deficiency in the current year, just around the timeliness of review and reconciliation of credit card expense statements for staff. So that's included in there. And then we provided an update on the prior year recommendations or observations that we had around journal entry review in the Parks and Rec Department, which has been remediated, and we find that recommendation is closed. And then there was another recommendation just around review of deposits that are aged, or we had found an error in recognizing deposits last year, and So looked a little closer at those and did recommend that a more thorough review be done of a lot of the aged amounts in there. You have tons and tons of very, very small amounts sitting in there that could be aged. It's not a material issue, but would require a bit of work to clean up, which management has provided a response to all of our observations and recommendations in that letter. In terms of independence, I do want to confirm for you that we are independent in our work as your auditor. We don't have any sort of relationships or other services that are threatening our independence. There is a new requirement in the auditing standards to communicate with those charged with governance the ethical principles that we're following with regards to independence in the year. And so in the back of our report there, we do note that we follow the CPA Code of Conduct and rules within Canada, but we also do follow international ethics standards boards for accountants rules when it comes to independence. So I had to make that communication new in the standards this year. Also, we would usually report to you if there were any upcoming changes in accounting standards that you needed to be aware of that might change the look of the district's financial statements or result in any restatements. We have had a reprieve from new accounting standards for this year and for next year, and then it's not until the 2027 year that the new public sector accounting standards conceptual framework comes into play, as well as a financial statement presentation standard. So that'll be for your 2027 year end. So a couple years of break from adopting new standards. So that's it for me in our report. Thanks to the team here for all their help with getting us to where we are now, ready to sign.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bates-Seymour. It's a very good overview of everything in the report. I think very helpful for us to have a quality auditor like KPMG help, to walk through all these things. A lot of comfort to the taxpayer. Are there questions for either KPMG or the staff on the SOFI report or any of the new ACC DCCs? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, just a couple of comments. It was very nice on this report to see on the statement of financial position the improved performance in executing the capital projects, because we struggled a little bit, but momentum, I guess, is building and experience is certainly showing up. So it's very nice to see that. And also, I think the accumulated surplus shows that our plan for sustainable infrastructure funding have improved our financial capacity to replace our district's aging infrastructure. So it's nice to see that in the reporting. Also appreciated KPMG's diligence in flagging control deficiencies and the management response. Sorry, I should say staff response, not management response. Staff response to the recommendations. And I also did find that the KPMG discussion papers that you can link onto there, particularly about AI in the public sector, were quite interesting information. And so it shows that is perhaps a new realm that we have to, as a council and as a district, focus on more going forward. So appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
And I'd just like to add on to Councillor Patterson's remarks. No questions at all. I just didn't, going through the material, I was just struck by how much hard work is done in order to prepare this package, both of the part of our staff who work diligently to make sure it's done on a timely basis, and in their collaborative role, which is independent of the auditor but still working with the auditor. And it just blows my mind that through the course of just a 12-month cycle, we actually produce a budget, and I say we, it's really the staff who produce the budget, and we make changes to it, and that all turns into a tax bylaw. And then within a few months later, we've got the audited financial statements, like the financial package for the prior year. It is a huge undertaking, and I just want to say thank you very much to everybody, the team pulling in, and I know it's been a challenging year with some of the staffing situation in the department, and just to be here tonight with this quality of financial reporting and a clean audit statement, it's just hats off. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Perhaps I'll just take a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I would reiterate Councillor Watson's comments. I do have 3 quick questions, if I might. As far as the net financial assets go, I see that they dropped by about $7 million or 11%. And I'm just wondering if you can touch on how the reserve levels are still tracking, or if they're still tracking appropriately against our long-term infrastructure needs that we have. Thank you.
Ms. LaChance, that's a question square in your ballpark.
Absolutely. Thank you. Through your worship, thank you for the question. Absolutely astute in terms of zeroing in on the net financial assets and the change in that. You do see just below on the same page the change in the invested intangible capital assets that depicts the asset side of the equation. So we would be drawing down on our cash investments, investing that into assets. And then you, in terms of reserves, you would have the accumulated surplus, which is also grown with those additional contributions and surplus contribution. And so you will see that both the reserves and the asset side of the balance sheet will have increased or grown from those investments. I'm not sure if I missed a second part of that question with maybe relative health.
I think you got it all.
No, I think you got it all, yeah. Then my next question was around the investment policy threshold that we exceeded. I think we exceeded it by about 3%. And you did kind of explain in the report that it was temporary. And so it's not really alarming to me, but I think maybe a question that could be asked would be, how long were we outside those policy limits? And is that an area of concern?
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, yeah, the temporary nature of that is purely in relationship to the financial statement timing. So we, at a point in time, take a snapshot and report balances with respect to reserves on December 31st. So at that point in time, the ratios show us out of bounds. What we'd be doing to look and manage that and make sure that that risk is managed against policy for council is how long, so the question is exact, how long would we be outside of that and how far are we outside? Staff are not in any way alarmed by the point in time measurement of us being outside. We know that it was simply a matter of us divesting to stay liquid for the capital investment, capital program that's underway. And so, you know, when we're looking for those portfolio limitations, we're really making sure that we don't end up with the portfolio all in one area or largely in one area. And so when we're just outside those portfolios, alarm bells aren't going off, but we would want to watch that wouldn't be a regular practice. And we would want to make sure that that would be temporary on staff's behalf and action would be taken.
Thank you so much for that answer. And my last question is around council expenses, because I noticed that there was quite a disparity between some of the councillors' expenses. And I'm wondering if there should be maybe clearer governance controls or approval thresholds for council expenses. And if you can maybe touch on that, if you know what other perhaps municipalities, how they handle council expenses and whether or not they have clearer thresholds.
Mr. Chance?
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to just start by commenting on a process to establish the budget for expenses for council. So each year within the annual financial plan, remuneration estimates for council are incorporated, as well as any estimates for attendance at conference, travel to committees, various meetings. Yeah, I want to say commissions, but that's largely the same as committees. And so the utilization of that is sometimes a function of a council member's participation in respective committees, but then also when it comes to participation in conferences. So the utilization of that is up to council. The budget, in my history here, has basically been left unchanged and is utilized, in part by the sort of what the demand is, but also consideration given, I think, in terms of planning for the year. I would suggest that if council would want to look into that further, get more background, we can report back. Maybe take a look at if there's any other policies or processes. But ultimately, it does liken itself to a staff training budget, where we would typically look at the budget for the year, understand the number of people that need to draw on that budget, and plan ahead, making sure that there's equal opportunity.
Thank you very much. Those are all my questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions, so I'll turn to this table and see if we can have the motions. So first is approval of the statements.
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? In the Sophie report? No? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Just a quick question on, I know that comes back as part of our annual report as well. Is there any intention, I think you flagged at sort of the point that sometimes it's confusing to look at the public sector accounting standards and the versus sort of what people tend to think of as being, oh, you've got this big surplus, but it's really, money that's, accumulated, assets as we're replacing them and so forth. Is there, we've kind of been, modifying the financial annual report over the years. Is some of that explanation expected to go sort of more prominently within the annual report as well? Sorry, threw me to you, Ms. LaChance.
Yes, there's an opportunity within the CFO message as well as in the package to expand on that and make sure that the public's well aware, particularly in this period of an investment cycle where you have the accounting surplus showing as so large, but really they're dedicated revenues from a budget perspective. Absolutely. We, don't bring the CFO message at this time because we're working with draft statements, looking for council's approval. But as we finalize that this week, we can look to include that. Yeah.
So moved, Your Worship.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? And finally, that we receive the DCC and amended cost charge annual report.
So moved, Your Worship.
I'm not sure if your microphone is on, sorry.
Oh, my apologies, it is. Sorry, we are on, we just called the question on recommendation 2 to receive the KPMG audit report. I took you as innocent.
I would be innocent, thank you.
And then we just had the motion moved and seconded for the DCC and ACC report. So it's live on the table now. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? I do just want to take a moment I think I think it was accurately reflected.
Oh, Your Worship. I will take, just before you begin, I will take this opportunity to make a motion to extend the meeting until 10:30.
Thank you. Important. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Thank you for that. I'll keep this very brief, but for those of you that don't know, we don't have a large audience online, but Ms. LaChance, our Director of Finance and Asset Management, has a new opportunity and will be leaving us. And I think this might be the last meeting that you're with us in the public realm. And so I really wanted to just take a brief moment. I'm not going to drag this out, but for those who aren't aware, she stepped into this role really consolidating a lot of that knowledge between finance, asset management, and modernizing a lot of aspects of our operations to in really positive ways. We had a former CFO who really kind of initiated the asset management, and it was really heartening to see it picked up and just run with and continuous improvement come with that. And really just bring a level of professionalism both in the reporting and the presentation that has been phenomenal for the community to have. And I cannot begrudge you for the opportunity that awaits you, but on behalf of council, I really want to just express our appreciation for all that you've done for the community and for the council and for the district in your time here. So formally wish you all the best and thank you so much for what you've done. Yeah. You're welcome to say a few words if you want, but you do not have to.
I'll do my best after receiving those wonderful comments and very kind. I really absolutely appreciate the moment to address you and just thank you for the opportunity. This truly is the most beautiful place in the world, and to get to serve here for the time, even though short, has left its imprint on me. And I can't help but know that you guys will all be coming with me in terms of my next venture. The work that we've done here together has been, in my opinion, nothing short of profound. The pace of change, the level of commitment from council to doing what's right, it's a finance person's dream. And so to be, as you said, moving to another opportunity, but my time here has been so special. So I just really want to take the opportunity as well to thank you, and thank you for receiving all those reports.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we can let you guys go and have a nice evening. It's a late night, so thank you, Ms. Bates-Emer, for your time here tonight. We move then to section 9, bylaws and permits. We have a number of pieces that have had first, second, and third reading. So first up is 9.1. This is Upland Setting and Design application for 3490 Beach Drive. Oh, sorry, this one is not. This is not a first three readings. This is a presentation for consideration. I'm not sure if I should give this to Mr. Green or Mr. Bowl. Mr. Green. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. The district has received an application for an upland siting design permit for the property located at 3490 Beach Drive to allow for changes to the rear of the property, including a new covered arbour structure, a hot tub and associated landscaping and hardscaping. This application was presented to the advisory design panel on April the 14th of this year, and who recommended the application be approved. Staff have no concerns with the application and are also recommending that the application be approved. The applicant, Danny Lamborn of Eden Project, should also be in attendance online today to answer any questions that council may have on the application.
I do see him online, so that is good to have. He or she, I'm not sure which, online. And so I'll turn to this body. Are there any questions on this application? I don't see any questions, so perhaps a motion.
I will move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? I'm going to wish the applicant all the success. I am heartened by the fact that earlier this meeting we did include some council priority projects for optimization that included some delegation, of options, including minor upland setting and design, which is probably appropriate for this kind of piece. And I do think that this type of relatively modest changes to existing buildings and yard infrastructures really does not need to come to council for approval. So I'm looking forward to some of those changes that they come forward. But I do want to extend my appreciation to the thoughtful design to the applicant, because I think it also makes it very easy to see these approvals. So seeing nobody speaking in opposition, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Thank you for sticking it out until 10 p.m. We will move on. We move then to the tax rates bylaw. We did have first, second, and third reading of this earlier. I'm going to ask that someone read the motion for adoption into the record.
Your Worship, I will move that tax rates bylaw 2026 number 4964 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. We don't usually debate much, but this is our opportunity for sober second thought in all of these. So if there's any changes of heart or other points, take them now. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Perhaps the same mover can move to the...
Your Worship, I would further move that Boulevard Frontage Tax Bylaw number 3416, 1982, Amendment Bylaw number 4963, 2026 be adopted.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Smart, you indicated you may want to do a motion arising in an email. Would you like to raise that?
Do that under new business, but would you like it now?
It's up to you. I think my understanding is the motion was just really to bring back a report on these tax and the bylaw frontage tax, the cost considerations and pieces. So
yeah, happy to bring it up now. That staff bring a report to council that outlines the environmental and cost considerations around the taxed boulevard maintenance program.
Can I make a suggestion that you add as part of the 2027 budget process so it can inform that process?
Definitely, that's a great addition. Yeah.
So as a mover, is there a seconder? Seconded. You can feel free to motivate. I think the wording of the language is pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
Yeah, we have had interest both around this table and for members of the community when this program has come up, just to really more fully understand whether or not it's meeting our environmental values and whether or not it's something that should be considered into the future. And I think we feel like we could just use a little bit, I myself feel like I could use a little bit more information in order to make governance advice on this. So just appreciate having a bit more information.
Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you. Move to item 9.4.
Your worship, I would move that planning, building, and development fees and charges bylaw number 4845, 2023, amendment bylaw number 4952, 2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. And then 9.5.
Your worship, I would move that elections and voting bylaw number 4284, 2005, amendment bylaw number 4965, 2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. That brings us to section 10. These are both, section 10.1 and 10.2 are both open for public input. So I will move first to, is it Mr. Green or Mr. Bull? Mr. Green, to introduce 1175 Beach Drive's request for a liquor license referral. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received a liquor license referral associated with the Oak Bay Beach Hotel. The applicant has applied to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch to increase the license capacity by adding 6 additional areas for a total of 18 persons associated with the hotel spa to the liquor primary license. The application has been referred to the district for review and a response by LCRB. Staff are recommending that council direct staff to provide an opt-out of comment response to the LCRB for the application. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. I do have in my notes here that Summer Mander, liquor licensing specialist, was going to be available, but I don't see them online at the moment. So if anybody is here to answer questions, if there are any, I can maybe just turn on your video so I know that's you. And otherwise, we'll come back to this table. Are there any questions from members of council to staff or the applicant? I have a question. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. But do we know, it says as part of the spa location, do we know if that's like around the pool, in the spa building, or where that is?
Your Worship, yeah, that is correct. It is essentially around the pool area and the spa area at the lower level area.
Okay.
So there are 6 additional areas that have been identified.
Okay.
And
Can I just
currently,
ask,
yeah.
do we know the impact of that? Because I think currently that area, the pool and the spa, is restricted to ages 16 and up. So would the change of the liquor licensing change that age limit to 19 and up if it's a liquor primary location?
Ooh, that is I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I don't believe so. Yes, I would, yeah, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. Fair. Thank you. Councillor Green?
I just wanted to, excuse me, through you ask whether or not, and I can't remember, this is a general question, can people carry their alcoholic beverages from the pool area, spa area, up to the hotel area, do you know? Or are they confined to that area? If that license is extended, are they confined to consume the alcoholic beverage around the pool and spa area only?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, I believe so, given that the liquor license doesn't incorporate the entire property. There'll be certain areas, and therefore I presume that, yeah, that they won't allow you to move drinks to areas that are not covered by the liquor license primary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we have a recommendation here, really, which is our common one when these applications come forward for internal operational changes, which is to opt out of comment. So perhaps I'll get that put on the floor, the recommendation here.
I will move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Green?
Just really quickly, I asked the question because it's a very challenging area in terms of navigating, and it would be a difficult area if you were slightly under the weather. So that was my question: if they can move, and if they do, what are the hazards? Thank you.
I think we'll leave those questions to the hotel operator themselves. I don't think the issue there is the alcoholic beverage transiting. It's more the people. All right, we will, the recommendation here is just to opt out. So any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then our last item on the agenda under 10.2 is council remuneration. Ms. Gannon is here for our Director of Human Resources. And I just will note that this is a return council gave direction on a policy direction, and report comes back to us following that direction and is now in front of us for consideration under bylaw. Ms. Gannon, welcome. You're so lucky to be the last one on the agenda.
Thank you. I will tell you that I'm way past my bedtime, so I apologize. So further to the direction council provided staff at the April 13th meeting, this report provides data regarding the council remuneration for the comparator municipalities, outlining that the average for the mayor is $76,271 and $32,350 for councillors. Should this be approved, it would result in approximately an increase of $40,000, which represents 0.09% taxation impact. So tonight, staff are seeking approval of the draft council remuneration policy and that council bylaw number 4966/2026 be given first, second, and third readings. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And just for our clarification, even though the remuneration bylaw is being considered for passage at this time, it would be effective at the start of the next council term. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be effective the day of inauguration, November 2nd.
Great. Thank you very much just for that clarification. Are there any questions from council to staff? Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a really quick question. Thanks very much for the report, Ms. Gannon. I'm wondering, and I'm just basing this on the fact that some people, because some people that sit around the table have already declared that they're going to be running in the next election, I'm wondering if in the future, if we continue to do this the way, if it might have some merit to have this discussion prior to the beginning of the year, which is when some people do claim or put forward that they're going to be running again, just so that they're not in a position of conflict. Thank you.
Almost that's a rhetorical question for council, I would think, more than for Ms. Gannon, but procedurally, is that something that could be accomplished?
Yeah, through the chair, yes. The problem with that is that we do rely on the data after the CPI comes out, and that does not come out until mid to late January, so we need to wait for that. But that being said, most municipalities do it in this format, so it would be the same across municipalities.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I will note that it really, until the people submit their applications, their intent, there really is nobody that's officially running until that time happens. So I think we can probably safely put that into that context. Any other questions for staff? Jumping the gun. Then motions are in order. So go ahead, Councillor Green.
I will move the staff recommendation.
Actually, we need to actually read in the.
So
actually, there's two parts. So the first part, we can approve council policy, HR 19.
Hang on. I just
Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but do we not have to go to the public as well?
Well, we do. My apologies.
Oh, right. Okay.
There are possibly some online. So before I go to the calling of the question, I will turn to the public. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Always at 10 o'clock, my brain starts to shut off just a little bit. It's way past my bedtime, too. Are there any members of the public who wish to address council? I didn't see any hands, but happy to take that ask now. I do not see any hands raised from the members of the public. So I don't need it read into the record for just, can I have someone move approval of the council policy, HR 019 moved?
I will move
Seconded.
approval.
Thank you. Any discussion on the policy? Councillor Green?
Thank you. I just want to say I'm really grateful to our HR director for bringing this forward. I think it was long overdue in Oak Bay to formalize a policy like this, and it does take the burden off council. I think it's a really important move forward, and I think it modernizes our practices. So thank you very much to Director Gannon.
Right, thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. And then read into the record, first and second.
Your worship, I would move that council remuneration bylaw number 4966, 2026 be read a first and second time.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Don't see any. Thank you, Ms. Gannon, for doing the work and bringing it back to us. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed.
Your worship, I would further move that council remuneration bylaw number 4966, 2026 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. This will come back after a pause for sober second thought, take a future council meeting for adoption. Thank you very much, Ms. Gannon. With that, I may have stolen the thunder under new business notices of motion by doing it as a motion arising. Is there any other new business or motions or notices of motions tonight? Seeing none, I think a motion to adjourn is in order. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed, not opposed? Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
See you soon.